Coming up next on Two Cops, One Donut.
The evaluations he had, my chief prosecutors would come down and watch me in trial, watch my skill set. How did she do during voir dire? How did she do during cross-examination? They would look at, how quickly I'm processing things. Do I have cases that I drag on and continue over and over again? Am I responding to my discovery requests in a timely manner? If I was continually losing cases, I think the conversation wouldn't be about the fact that I was losing, but more about what is going on in your case evaluation that you're not seeing why this is a good case or a bad case, or what's going on in trial where you're lacking a certain skill. So, and that's hard as a prosecutor to be able to look at a case and be able to say, hey, this is, I'm missing some evidence here, or I'm really not sure that a jury is going to, find for this. It's something that you learn over time. So I definitely lost more cases at the beginning of my career and, doing things silly like missing elements. Twice in my career, I forgot to prove that it happened in the state of Texas. That's a jurisdictional thing. So if you don't prove it happens in the state of Texas, you can't get a conviction on it.
All right, welcome back. Two Cops, One Donut. I am your host, Eric Levine, and today, this episode's about judges. I have Melanie Houston with me. How are you, ma'am?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm wonderful. This is awesome because for the longest time, you have been one of my go-to judges, and now you came through. I've been looking for a judge that wouldn't be boring, for one.
Thanks.
That's hard to find. There's some good judges out there I think would have been cool. Hagerman would have been cool. Summers would have been cool.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
just don't know if she would have done this. Atkins. So any of those judges out there, if you're listening, those are your shout outs because I like you guys and you're cool judges. Mostly because you favor for me, but I put solid cases together. So
yeah, I don't really think that's how it works. I wouldn't say we favor you.
I know.
It's that we are fair and impartial and allow you to come into our offices and present us a case that we can look at and say, yes, this is good, or no, it's not
Very
good.
true. No, it's I definitely learned my lessons when I first started. It's just a matter of figuring out the right way to articulate things because a lot of times you know how it is. You write something and you're
Yes.
like, in your head, everything's there.
Yes.
Like you write it out and you're like, and then the judge reads it and the judge is like, dude, you're missing this, you're missing that. Like,
Yes.
I can't sign this. And I'm like, oh, shit. Well, that happened. I just didn't. Okay, I'll go take it back.
Right.
I'll rewrite it. But,
right.
So for those listening to this, my episodes, as you know,
Mhm.
they're lengthy. And
They are. You talk a lot.
I do talk a lot. And so with that, we got to educate too and stuff like that. So with the judge episode, for everybody wanting to know what this one's going to be about, we're going to go down the path. You guys know my formula by now. We're going to talk about where she's from, all that stuff. But we're going to get into like things like what is a judge's responsibility? How do you get there? What's the path to become a judge? What's the good, the bad? What's the future of judgeship? I don't know.
Sure.
Judging. What's the future of judging? And we'll get into some of the things that I think a lot of people want to know, like how come, this guy has robbed 16 people and he's still out on the street? What's the difference between a federal and a state and local and all that stuff and civil judge and all that. So we'll go down that path. That's what to expect this episode. So it should be, for me, I'm a nerd, so I like that stuff and I'm going to learn just as much as you're going to teach. So
sounds like a plan. I will do my best.
All right. But before we get started, you brought gifts.
I did. Yes.
So I did not know this about Melanie, but she's a beer nerd.
I am definitely a beer nerd.
I love it because I used to make beer.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That would be hard. I've never even begun to think about processing that, but that would be difficult.
So they have kits. And
right.
I don't want to sound like I was like this badass at making beer, but me and my dad, we bought a kit together. We bought a couple kits and created some beers. And it was kind of a father-son project.
Aww.
Yeah, when I moved down here to Texas. And we made a wheat, a Belgian triple.
Nice.
We screwed up on. So, folks, if you don't know, too much sugar in a beer only makes it stronger. So
Mm-hmm.
we added all the sugar that we were supposed to add for like we were only supposed to add like half at the beginning, and then add another part of the beer. So we added all this beer. So I'm calling up like the local beer store that we bought the kit from, and they're like, "Oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it." It's like just when it comes time, add this sugar, come back up, get this sugar, and add it when you're supposed to. And I goes, it's not gonna ruin it? He goes, no, just be stronger. Your 8 to 9% will probably be about 10 to 11%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it was about an 11% beer.
Did it taste delicious?
It tasted just fine. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Now
Good.
I'm kind of I'm out of the
brewing business.
the wheat phase, the wheat beers.
See, I'm a big fan of the wheat beers. I like German beers. Pretty much that's my go-to.
Yeah. I burned myself out.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I've never been able to. I can do the IPAs, but it's never going to be my first choice.
I gotcha.
But,
yeah.
So here's my question for you. This is what I've heard about brewing, is that you have to have a space big enough to put like the beer in the fridge or something, like a giant, okay, maybe this is just what somebody told me, but that you have to have like space to store it. So if you don't have a giant fridge or a giant freezer,
no.
How does that work?
So when a beer is processing, it just needs to be dark and it needs to be somewhat cool.
Okay.
So my house, this was the garage at the time.
Oh,
but
okay.
I just put it in a closet in the garage so it was against the cement floor, and we did it at this time of year. I didn't do it during the summer, obviously.
Obviously, so, that'd be terrible.
So we made it during this time of year, just let it age naturally out in the garage with that cool floor, and that was fine. So yeah, you have to be tactical on when you're gonna make it. Don't be like, I'm gonna make a summer beer and then you've got nowhere to store it. Also, inside the house, our closets, the bottoms of them aren't finished, so it's just straight cement. So if we wanted to, we could store it there too. But we just put it in bottles. Once it was done fermenting and doing its process, we bottled it and then put them in bottles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someday that can be a retirement goal.
It's not hard. It really isn't. I thought it's just it's a process. Like,
it is.
It's got stages. So it's like prep work for painting a house. Just get all the prep work done first, and then it's so much easier.
See, I'm impatient, so that doesn't sound fun to me at all.
Okay.
No, I'll try it someday.
But you brought a local brewery, Maple Branch.
Yes.
Okay, and the first thing we're going to try out is a Czech-ulator. I like it.
Yep.
It's a Czech Pilsner.
Yes.
6.4%, and I will show it to the camera.
So I love Maple Branch. They opened, I want to say 2020. I feel like they opened right during the beginning of the pandemic. They are 2 TCU grads, and it's got a very German beer garden vibe to it.
Okay.
So they've got an indoor space that's got just the long tables, very reminiscent of Hopper House and the old school German breweries, and beautiful bar area. And then in the exterior portion, there's like a outdoor beer garden. They now have a pizza truck there. So
that's the best. I love when they have the food trucks outside.
It's actually very good pizza. So
cheers.
Prost.
Nice. Oh yeah. Oh, just it's
smooth.
light.
It's smooth, light, drinkable.
That's the problem I have with wheat beers right now, is when I drink one, I just want it, and I'm just like, ugh, I feel so full.
Mm-hmm. Nope, this is
super light,
very drinkable, very easy. That's why we started with this one.
Yes. And where are they located?
They are off of Whitmere Street, right? Behind Montgomery Plaza area.
Oh, that industrial area.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very cool. I would have never known. I know there's a gym, a jiu-jitsu place back there, Machado's gym, which
it's fairly close to Angelo's. So they kind of share a parking area with Angelo's.
Okay. Very cool.
Wow. Highly recommend it. It's my favorite place around here. I know I was listening to one of your episodes where y'all were talking about Turning Point, which I like Turning Point, but I like the ambiance at Maple Branch better.
Okay.
And it's pet friendly, which is my big sticking point with Turning Point.
They're not pet friendly?
They are not.
They're the only brewery that I've ever been to that wouldn't be.
Right.
That's kind of a brewery cultural
It is.
acceptance is like
It
you go,
absolutely
yeah,
is.
yeah.
So, that's my issue with Turning Point. And they brew a lot of doubles, and there's just only so much of that you can do. So,
I like Johnny Karate.
mhm,
That's one of my favorites.
that's good.
Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, you're right. And they focus a
Mhm,
lot on those IPAs, the hazies, the
mhm.
doubles. Yeah. But if that's your niche, I get it. There was one that there was a cool brewery right in Arlington, behind Runners. The Runners, it's a shoe store.
Mhm.
And they didn't make it. I think they called Maine or something like that.
Oh, there was also Legal Draft in
Yeah.
Arlington. I think they left
Yeah.
too.
They just left.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites too. And I just,
Weird.
yeah, it's surprising. Oh, I found their names of their beers so amusing.
Yeah. For those that don't know, legal brewing, everything was based off of the criminal justice system, essentially, for the names of their beers. So that makes a lot of sense why we both like that. We would
Yeah.
do my kids' art camp there.
Really?
Yeah, they have an art camp that they would host.
They were very kid friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. They even let kids drink. It was amazing.
I don't think I remember that part about it.
I'm just kidding.
But definitely they had games and board games, and anytime we went in there, there would be families and large groups of kids there.
So this is gonna throw people off because when they think of a judge, they just think uptight, strict, and you're a beer nerd. So
I am a beer nerd.
that's
Yep.
awesome. So
Yep.
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Utah.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
I am born and raised
So you're
just
Mormon.
outside of Salt Lake City. Clearly, yes. Can you tell that? No, I was a Catholic growing up in Utah.
Okay.
My mom is a Catholic school teacher. Well, I should say my mom was a Catholic school teacher. As of July, she's now a retired Catholic school teacher.
Oh, congrats.
So very cool for her. Took a little bit of convincing, but
Still in Utah?
No. So I grew up there, went to college there, and while I was in college, my dad got a job offer in Austin, and he moved to Austin planning on being there for a year and then moving right back to Utah. And he was in Austin for a year, loved it, decided to stay another year. And we kind of thought, that's kind of weird, Dad. Like, are you going to come home? You know, we're all up here. And he loved it. He absolutely loved Austin, loved Texas culture, loved not being in the snow. And so he, I think it was like around the anniversary of his second year in Austin, he bought a house and said, no, I'm staying here. So slowly we all moved down here, and I ended up coming to law school in Fort Worth. And then he stayed in Austin. My sister's in Austin, and now my mom's there.
Really?
So, yep.
What did he do?
He was an IRS agent.
Okay.
Yes.
So if he was still doing that, now he's got to learn how to use a gun because apparently all the IRS agents are getting guns.
Also true. Well, my dad was very proficient with firearms. He was a fantastic shot, but unfortunately he passed a couple of years ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was rough, but he was also a lifelong smoker. So lung cancer got him. But he was very proficient in firearms. And
Okay.
he had he preferred rifles, and always the like deer hunting old school rifles, like the wood grain.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. He had a beautiful gun collection. So moving to Texas, it kind of fit him.
Okay. Well, I mean, the culture is as far as the outdoorsmanship and whatnot between Texas and Utah, because I was stationed in Montana.
Oh yeah.
And I actually miss that. It's like a time portal. Going back there. Even now, like you walk through a town in Montana, everybody, morning, sir, morning, ma'am, how are you? You know,
Right.
like genuine conversation too. Like hold the door open for everybody.
Right.
And I found the same thing in Texas and Utah. I actually had a job interview for the FBI in Utah.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get it, obviously.
I mean, kind of figured that. I wasn't going to mention it, but
yeah,
maybe you are some secret FBI agent. I don't know.
It's possible. I'm a plant, but yeah, I loved Utah. It was beautiful. I didn't know. Like, it's one of the things that if you've never been there, folks, it's beautiful. Even Wyoming, like all of that area is so nice, and that's why they're getting saturated by Californians right now.
Right.
From what I hear,
Right.
they're buying everything.
And
up.
it's been that way for as long as I remember growing up. Everybody was complaining about the Californians coming in and buying all this land, but I will say Utah is, I think, the absolute most beautiful state. Um, it was a little difficult. I'll be honest. It was a little difficult growing up Catholic in Utah, but aside from that, I was 20 minutes from the mountains.
Yeah.
You walked out my front door, and it was like all you could see was just these beautiful peaks. And we always at nighttime when the sun sets, the way that the light would hit it, they would turn like this beautiful pink or
Yeah.
purple. And where else do you get to see pink mountains? And
Right.
it was phenomenal. So we hiked a lot. My dad was really, really outdoorsy. So when I was little, we did a lot of fishing, a lot of camping, and just spending time in the mountains as much as we could. And I definitely miss that.
So he did IRS, and that's a form of
Mhm.
public service.
Yes.
So you had your dad.
Uh-huh.
There's one influence towards your path. Was there
Yes.
anybody else in the family that served in that? I mean, I consider teachers a servant as well,
Oh,
and
definitely.
and I see them. You're a judge, so this would be good for you. I see teachers as a part of the criminal justice system,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
it's I need to get a teacher on here. I've got one specific teacher I'm holding out for. He taught in the Fort Worth area his whole career. Was military. Was a drill instructor too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we
That's
went.
probably a great skill for a teacher.
Yeah, well, we went to school together too. At TCU for our grad program,
Hmm.
and I really got to know him. But I figure somebody with that extensive knowledge, and he taught at a high school level, so that's really where
Right.
some of the issues really start to just show. And I want to see what his perspective is on what we can do in the education system to help cut the problems off before they really fully take hold.
Right.
That's the last chance, in my opinion.
Right. I think it starts earlier than that.
Yes, I agree.
So,
But that's we have a lot of resources more for that 9th
right.
to 12th grade level than we
Right.
ever do at the younger level.
I think so. Before I was a judge, I was a prosecutor for the city. And back before 2015, when some laws changed, we did a lot of truancy cases. And I remember sitting across from parents for kids that were in high school, and they would say, well, what do you expect me to do? I can't make my 16-year-old kid go to school. And I think that was my thought is, well, you can't now, but I mean, my
Well,
mom could call me right this second and yell at me and tell me to do something. And I would stop what we're doing and go take care of whatever my mom needs,
yeah,
because that starts when you're little,
yes,
and that healthy fear, I guess, of authority in your mom and, the consequences. And then as you get older and develop, you start wanting to do that on your own. So starting, yeah, you can't make a 16-year-old go to class, but giving parents the resources to help them when their kids first show signs of truancy issues, or giving kids the incentive to come to school so that they develop their own desire for education. That I think is going to start in the elementary schools,
yes,
and it's kind of going to be a two-pronged approach. Not only focus on high school the resources, but also try to encourage kids even from a younger age,
yeah,
because once you've kind of got that plan in place, one of the things I'm really lucky at, and I tell people all the time, I was very lucky to go. My mom, because she was a Catholic educator, really wanted us to go through Catholic schools. And so I went K through 12. I went to a college prep high school. So I didn't know that college was an option. I thought it was mandatory. I literally thought you go to college the same way you go to high school
Oh,
until
that
I was a senior in high school.
that makes sense. I mean, it really does.
It was just
Yeah,
the way we were raised, and granted we had a lot of resources that way, but I think when you start talking to kids about, getting an education is important, and not just saying go to college, that's not for everybody, but coming up with a plan for after high school, whatever that may be, whether it's going to the military, whether it's going to college, whether it's going to a trade school, learning a skill, that if we start, from a very young age, that you're going to want to develop your desire for something in life, whatever it ends up being, find your passion and do it, and then just give those resources and educate kids. I think that's the way to keep them in school and keep them out of trouble.
yeah. I like that you said foster a passion, because that's how I teach my kids. I've always been afraid of being the dad, because there's stereotypical cop dads.
I did not know that, but okay.
And it's they end up having, if they have daughters, they have crazy promiscuous party animal daughters, like it's like
Okay.
the preacher's kid, like that.
Right.
That is
Right.
as much as it's a stereotype. There's a lot of truth behind it. Um, high divorce rate.
Hmm.
All of these things. So I have subconsciously, consciously, kind of carved a opposite path from what most cops do. Um, I, like a lot of cops won't share with their wife. Like I tell her everything, all the bad stuff. Like I'm like, she knows when I've had a bad call or whatever it
Right.
is. And I know a lot of cops are like, you shouldn't put that on your family. Like, don't. But I look at the history and I'm like, or what? I bottle it up and then become an
Right.
alcoholic, lose my family, do all that stuff. So I had to try something different.
Right.
There is no path. There's no guide to how to do this stuff. But the point I'm getting to is the going for your passion thing. Like, I have stuff I would love my kids to. I would love my kids to stick with jujitsu.
Right.
I want them to be protected, but I only show them things. Hey, here's this. If they latch onto it and they have a passion for it, I'm gonna foster it.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
But if they decide that it's not for them, given that the reasons are understandable, like I don't want you to quit just because it got hard.
Right.
I'm gonna make you
Right.
do difficult things. But if you just like, I'm not into it, I don't like it, like we'll figure it out. Why don't you like it? But if it's because you just don't like it, well, shit. I'm not
Right.
gonna make you eat food you don't like.
Right.
It tastes disgusting. The kid dry. I remember when they
Yeah.
were little, the dry heaving, trying something. I'm like, Sarah, I don't think she likes it. What
Yeah.
do? They can't communicate at that age.
Right.
But yeah, fostering passions is a big one. And then the other side of the house is you got parents that weren't raised by parents that weren't raised by parents. That's the other side that we don't
Mhm.
get a hold. We don't have a lot of power on that side.
Right.
So what I would like to see, then I have seen it actually, is programs where the parent is just accountable for attendance and helping.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just send your kid away. All right, you guys need to help raise my kid right.
Right.
The parent needs to learn some skills
Right.
along the way too. And that's a hard thing to do. How do you tell someone how to be a parent without them getting defensive?
Right. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I had many a times where, I would be talking about, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And essentially they're like, listen, little girl, here, sit down. Like, you don't have kids. You don't know what time, which they were true. I don't. So it was hard to tell somebody like, hey, this is how you should be raising your child. But I think that's where mentorship programs come in, and just having resources available for people. If you've got great parents in the school saying, hey, why don't we have, a teachers meeting, a parent teacher meeting, and invite somebody to come in. What do you need help with? When you're trying to feed your kids, there's that whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you're still focused on food and shelter, there's no way you're going to be able to increase, trying to get into education and all that kind of stuff. You want that for your kid, but if you are just trying to meet their basic necessities, that's impossible. So, you're going to focus on the most immediate need.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of this program right here, Next Metropolitan, that's ran by a homicide sergeant out of Arlington.
I think, did you do a podcast with him?
I did.
I'm in the middle of that one right now.
It's so good. He's such a good talker.
He really is.
He is.
Yes.
I was like, dude, we need to do some more collaboration. I just like his voice and the
yeah.
way he articulates things. He's very
chill.
Yeah, he's so mellow. And but yeah, that you talk about that's a program for, if you're not familiar with that episode. Robert Walsh, he does Next Metropolitan, and it's basically taking at-risk males from 12 to 21 and teaching them how to be men. Without the whole how you identify movement. You know what I mean?
Aside from that.
Yeah, having a male influence, and because a lot of times the troubled youth, it's a single parent issue. It really is. Not having some sort of male influence there as a male growing up. So I really like it. I think it's cool. It's got a lot of potential, and it's getting bigger from what I see. So I leave this. He might want me to wear this shirt, but I rather leave it up there as advertisement for him.
That works.
So all right. So you grew up in Utah.
I did.
And which is amazing in itself. Very cool.
As we sit here sharing a beer, yes.
Yeah. You grew up there. You moved to Texas. How old were you when you came over here?
I had just graduated from college, so I was 22.
Okay, so when you went to college, what'd you go to college for?
I went to Westminster College in Salt Lake City.
Did you run a dog?
Did I run a dog?
Isn't that same?
No.
The Westminster?
No, the Westminster Kennel Club. No, I did not have have a dog at my college.
Oh, okay.
We were, so we went there. It's actually the same college my dad went to, and then eventually my little sister. So it's kind of, I guess, a family school now.
Okay.
And some of my dad's sisters went there as well. So went there. I had really wanted to go out of state. That was my goal. Is I wanted to get out. But luckily I had really smart parents and a really smart grandma. We were talking about service. My grandma was an Army nurse. And so,
Oh.
yes. So grandma was tough. My mom's mom was incredibly tough.
World War II?
Korean
Korean
War.
War. Okay.
Korean War. Yep. And so, I had a bunch of different colleges to go to, but Westminster gave me the best scholarships. And so my mom's like, look, I know you want to be a lawyer. That means a lot of student loans. Take the easy route now. Go to the school that gives you the most money, the least amount of loans, and then you can go into debt later on. And I said, okay, that's probably a pretty good idea. So, but my mom was awesome and let me live on campus. So even though I was 25 minutes from home, it felt like a whole new world to me.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. It was a great college experience. And then I had a professor there who was a professor at Texas Wesleyan University. He and his wife both were professors at Texas Wesleyan. And when he came to Westminster to teach, he knew I was interested in law school and was looking at different places. And he said, honestly, Melanie, I think this is the best school I could think of for you. I'm a small class type person. I don't do big college campuses. I like one-on-one, relationships with my professors. I always tell people like I was on a first name basis with every professor I had in college.
Yeah.
So going to a giant law school would not have been a good decision for me. So he said, just go check it out. So my sister and I came down to visit my dad. He was in training in Dallas and said, okay, well, let's drive around. Let's check it out. And I loved the campus. It was just the one building in downtown Fort Worth. Everybody was super polite and welcoming. And I really trusted this professor. And so I said, okay, that's where I'll go. Got in and moved to Fort Worth. And I think I cried my first day here because I got lost in the big city.
The big city.
Yes. Well, I think at the time I moved here, the population of Utah was 5 million people. The population of the DFW area was also 5 million. So I was trying to return a Penske truck and couldn't find my way around. And I'm pretty sure I cried. I was like, I just want to go home. I can't do this. But obviously my family has no quit in them either. So they said, at least try.
Right.
Literally you're just returning a truck. It's fine. And so that. So,
what years are we talking about? When was this?
2005 to 2008.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you went for your bachelor's degree,
Yes.
what was your focus?
I studied political studies with an emphasis in business management and a minor in French.
French.
Yes.
Okay.
My one rebellious thing.
Oh, all right.
My mom wanted me to take Spanish, said it would be far more useful to me. And I said no.
Kicking yourself on that one.
A little,
especially
but,
being in Texas.
My uncle, my mom's brother, who was also Army, he said, do what you want, do what you love. You're going to do well in the class. And I think in the end, my mom was happy because that was a decision I made in high school. And so for me to go through high school, 4 years of French in high school, 4 years of French in undergrad, I think she was just happy that I stuck with it, that, even if it's not the most useful language to speak here in Texas, it's still something that was beneficial to me and something I enjoyed. And she definitely benefited from it when we went to Paris and I was able to actually read signs and order food for her. So she kind of ate her words a tiny bit.
You still practice at all?
Or? Not at all.
Yeah.
Only when I'm traveling. Then I listen to the Duolingo and the Rosetta Stone and try and get my brain back up to trying to figure out, okay, I just need to know where to ask where the bathroom is and order food. And that's all I care about.
My mom tells me when I was 5, 6 years old, I was babysat by a French teacher. She'd teach French. And I knew the language. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you anything now. But yeah, I knew French when I was like 5 or 6 and pretty well. That's how she would babysit me. She'd just sit there and teach me French.
That's the secret to learning language, is just doing it when you're young.
Yeah,
My sister started taking Spanish, I think probably first, 2nd grade, and took it all through high school. And for a long time, she was very fluent in Spanish. She worked at a pizza joint where everybody spoke Spanish. So she was like, okay, cool, I got this.
I'm pretty good at listening and figuring it out. not speaking it. I know I know key things that I need to know as a cop, but for the most part, we'll go to Spanish restaurant or whatever, and they all speak, the good places anyway. They all speak, Spanish, and I have a few officer friends that speak it fluently,
Right.
which works. But I'll say, hey, what are the specials today? And he'll ask, and then I'll listen. I know exactly what they're saying.
Right.
And, so I kind of figured it out. I know the danger words.
Right.
So
that's the important part.
That's the important part for me anyway. But okay, political, huh? Were you gonna get into politics, you think?
No, we just didn't have I really just enjoyed the classes. I enjoyed because it's a little bit of politics, it's a little bit of history.
Yeah.
And then adding the business emphasis onto it was kind of unique to my college. Most political science is all like very much one aspect of, political studies. But my college, for whatever reason, added that extra emphasis. There were like 4 or 5 different options, but I thought, well, business would be interesting. So it gave me a chance to take a business law class. I started to take a marketing class, but the professor was very sweet. She was actually the mother of one of my friends from high school, and she was very kind to me. And she said, listen, Melanie, I know you're on the law school path. This is my senior year of college. I know that's what you want to do. This class is not for you, and it's going to tank your GPA. So go find something else. So I took accounting just, to have something to do to talk to my dad about. And that ended up being one of the best classes I've ever taken.
Really?
I ended up loving it. I am terrible at math, and any lawyer you meet will tell you that. See, you should have gone to law school. Like, literally, my clerks will laugh at me because I had to figure out something the other day, and I told something so wrong, and the jailer was like, Judge, excuse me, do you mind if I correct you on that? And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, your math is off. So that's fine. That's fine. But accounting is not math. My sister's now a CPA. She'll tell you that. But so I ended up getting kicked out of the marketing class, and she was in her basic beginning accounting class. And I said, well, Katie, what do you think? Is it something I could handle? And she's like, yeah, it seems all right. I think she just thought, it'll be funny to watch me try and struggle through a math class. Oh my God.
I hate math. Like,
it's so hard.
I did my master's in criminology, so I had to take stats and stuff. Oh my God. I hate math. Hate it. It's why I became a cop. I was thinking I would be able to avoid math pretty much, but yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it is.
But I could never be an attorney simply because I can't sit in an office. I have to be moving. I got to be out. I
can understand that.
So that's the hard part for me. I love it. I do like law. I especially like the few times I do get to go to court, because I write shit hot cases that don't need me there.
That's the thing.
It is.
It really is. The better you do your job, the less court time you see. Yeah. And the better you build up your reputation among the defense bar. Right. They're never going to take you to trial.
Yep. And I can say since I've been a detective, there's only been 2 cases so far that they've tried. One was a juvenile case and had nothing to lose, and then the other one was another case. They had nothing to lose.
Right.
So, but yeah, you definitely learn where you screw up a lot as an officer, because I had gone to court quite a bit in my first 5 years.
Right.
And yeah, it is a good learning experience. As a prosecutor, what was it like for you dealing with police?
Well, so I worked in the municipal court, so I did traffic tickets mostly.
So you definitely work with cops.
I worked with police officers every single day, developed really close relationships with a lot of them, especially the motors guys who were in there every day. Yep. We talk every day. It was good. It's interesting being in the judicial position. I have to be more cognizant of being fair and impartial, and it's hard because you do build relationships with people. I have police officers that I've known for 10 years that I still see and, come in and say, hey, Melanie, how's it going? And it's
I would never say that while I'm working.
Yes.
Not while I'm working.
Exactly. Oh, my clerks will jump down your throat. But that it happens, come in and just want to visit. And I love that. I love talking to people, obviously, or I wouldn't be here with you today.
Right.
But, I think at some point, especially as a prosecutor, I would make people angry. So, I'd be like, hey, I'm dismissing this. Why? Well, here's my reasons why. Well, that's, and they get mad and
Well, they get emotionally invested
yeah.
because they put work into it,
Yeah.
which makes
And
sense.
yes, and
Yeah.
I get that, and I try to be, good about it, but also some days I just was fed up to hear I'm like, I'm doing this because this is what I need to do, and we'll talk about it another day.
Yeah.
But I liked working with police officers that closely. I really respect the job that they did, and
Yeah.
particularly I appreciated the ones who would come to court because it's not always easy to come to court on a traffic ticket that you wrote, especially if you're getting off work and having to come straight in. And so I was always trying to be aware of, especially if you came off that overnight shift and then had to sit in court. If I didn't need you, I wanted you out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And didn't want to waste your time if we weren't going to go to trial on things. But that being said, I also expected, like, I'm really sorry you got off work, but you said you were ready for trial, and now I'm taking it to trial, and I expect you to be here and do your job. So sometimes that would get frustrating because I'd go down and go toe to toe with a defense attorney and be like, okay, we're going to try this case, go upstairs, talk to the officer, and the officer's like, I'm really tired. I really can't do this. No,
Yeah.
I've already put my reputation out there. We're going to trial.
Yeah.
I remember that a couple of times. So
Yeah. The thing that people need to understand that aren't a part of this system is, like, if you're a midnights officer and you write tickets and all of a sudden that ticket is being contested,
mm-hmm.
if you tell me as a judge, is it true that me as a cop, if I don't show up, that case cannot be heard and it gets dismissed?
Most likely, yes.
Okay.
Occasionally, there's times where things happen and the prosecutors will ask for a continuance. Probably the thing I can think of, most of the time an emergency continuance wasn't necessary. If we knew in advance you were going on vacation or something, we could put in a request. The only time I really remember blanket asking for a continuance on cases was the day that Matt Pierce got shot. And we had an entire room full of officers. And, we were ready for court. We were wheeling, dealing, and it was like 4 different courts going at one time. And so it was an entire room packed, and they were listening to the chase, and it was jovial and happy, and everybody was kind of teasing. And I wasn't working. I was mentoring a new prosecutor. And so I was kind of helping her go up and down and figure out what was going on. And I went downstairs to the courtroom and I came back up, and it was just this mass exodus. And Justin Swindell was the only person who stayed to tell me what had happened, which I will be forever grateful for.
Traffic guy.
So, yep. He said, and he asked, is it okay if we go? I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody just left, but so I said, tell me what happened, So I go down to the courts and I tell all the prosecutors that are in there, hey, you just lost all of your officers. And they were kind of like, wait, what? And I said, they're all gone. They're all on their way to JPS. It's a thing, ask for continuances. And so to the judge's credit at the time, every single one of the judges, when they found out, hey, we were all ready for court, everybody showed up, we need to continue these cases. Every single one of them said, absolutely. Nothing got dismissed after that. We were able to kind of salvage all of that. Frankly, it didn't matter. Fine if we had to dismiss all of them. It was a bigger deal.
Right.
But for the most part, unless there's a specific situation, if officers don't show up to court, that ticket gets dismissed.
But that's your call as a judge to figure out if this is an extenuating circumstance.
Correct.
So you have that ability.
Right. And the defendants have a right to be heard on that. So I remember only one defendant complaining. Basically, in the court I was in, the judge said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry. There's been an incident with the police department. The officers are gone. And I think it was still like, it wasn't even just they were going to JPS. It was still a manhunt. I mean, it was like, get out here.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And so, it wasn't like these officers are just going, it's important to go to JPS and be there for them to support them, but they were working. They were going to help solve the issue.
Yeah.
And all but one person stood up and was like, well, I've been here, and was really angry. And the judge just lost it. And she said, I'm so sorry to inconvenience you because an officer got shot, but your case is going to be reset. Get out of my court. And then the prosecutor and I were like, thank you, Judge. And, we kind of backed out a little bit. But other than that, it's a situation. And I get it. If you're the defendant, because by the time now the way the system works is by the time you get to your trial date, you've already been to court once for the pretrial docket, and then now for the trial docket. That's 2 days you're missing from work. It better be a good reason to continue it.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important that officers are honest with the prosecutors, especially if they know they're not going to be there. You can file a motion for continuance in advance, and then you can notify the defendant so they don't miss work, so they don't miss a day coming in, paying for parking, sitting here for a couple hours, and then having somebody ask for a continuance. That's, I think, unfair. And if we can avoid that. But it also meant, I think one time Curtis Page was going away or something, and I had to file like 40 motions for continuance because he had that many cases on his docket. So it was a lot. I ended up as a prosecutor, because we were filing so many motions to continue, it was really hard to find a notary. So I ended up just paying for that for myself because I was like, they all have to be sworn. We all had to have a notary, and we didn't have one in the office. So after about 2 weeks of trying to like walk over to City Hall and find somebody, or, find anybody in the courts, I finally just gave up and said, you know what, I'll be a notary, and then y'all file them, I'll swear them, and we can comply with our rules. But it's a lot of work, and I'm not gonna lie.
So as you were going through, you go through law school, you graduate. Mm-hmm. Did you know that you were going to be a prosecutor, or
yes.
did you? So it wasn't even a question.
Nope, that was my dream. So I started working at the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office when I was after my junior year of high school, and I loved it. It was a great experience. I first started working. They had a victims unit where they had counselors, licensed clinical social workers that were on staff to help victims of violent crime and children. And working in that unit was really eye-opening to see that side of the law. So I did that for a summer. Yeah, let's try it. Did that for the summer, thinking it was just going to be a temporary job. And when it was time for me to go back to high school, they said, if you want to keep working here, I was part-time, 20 hours a week, go ahead and stay on. So I would go to school, and then I would get off of school and have to either drive myself or find a ride down to work. And then I would go to work in my, high school uniform every day. And it was an awesome opportunity. But I remember sitting there one day looking at an attorney. It was like a Friday afternoon. He was walking around with, I don't know what was in his cup. It was probably water, but he was just so relaxed, and he'd had a really hard week, and I knew that, but he was just so relaxed and having fun. And I was like dealing with witness phone calls, and I thought, why am I doing this job? I should be doing that job. Yeah. And I knew I loved criminal law. I knew I loved being in the prosecutor's office. And so it was, for me, that was the plan, is just go to law school and then become a prosecutor.
So what's the process once you graduate, pass the bar, and is it like, you get jobfinder.com? How do you find a prosecutor gig? I don't even know the process.
Well, so I graduated law school in 2008. It was a great time to graduate and try and find a job. Everything going on in the country made it so easy.
Yeah, I bet.
Especially for brand new lawyers with no experience. So I was a substitute teacher for a while, trying to just have some money.
Yeah, you kind of look like a sub.
Yeah, it worked. I taught at my mom's school. So the benefit was I'm a terrible teacher. But, they were all terrified of my mom. So the kids were kind of like, we won't mess with her too much. Yeah. Except the only class I really loved subbing for was social studies. I really enjoyed that. Particularly, one of the units that they were teaching was teaching the Constitution. And I was like, I know your teacher left these notes, but I'm going to tell you everything I know with this law degree that I just paid a lot of money for that I'm not using. So listen up, kids. We're going to learn some stuff.
Here's the real Constitution.
Exactly. So I enjoyed that. It was good. But I ended up, weirdly, my first job was actually as a defense attorney. Thank you.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
So you went to the dark side a little bit?
I did. And I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. I did defense work and family law, and it was actually my dad who found me the job. So he had a coworker whose wife was pregnant, and she was going out on maternity leave, and they wanted somebody to fill her position. It was in Austin. And so she said, hey, if you want to cover for me while I'm gone, it's a great opportunity for you. So I worked there for a little while, less than a year, but a little while. And then I ended up having a friend. So that was in Austin, but I was really trying to get back up here to North Texas. And I had a friend working at the Dallas city attorney's office. And so she's like, hey, we're hiring prosecutors over here. Send me your resume if you want to come back up here. And I was like, absolutely. So that was really where it all took off.
So
that was it.
It's good. It does have a sourness to it.
Okay. They said it won an award, but I can't remember what the award was.
In a good way. Oh yeah, I should probably share. We're drinking Raspberry Fields Blonde Ale.
Wow. That is good. It's got a sour taste, but I wouldn't call it a sour.
I wouldn't call it a sour either. No. But it's good. And I like raspberries, so that helps.
Well,
but
they were highly complimentary of it. So I went in and I said, hey, I need some varieties. What do you recommend? And so they kind of gave me a little pack.
Also very light. Mm-hmm. So I like one.
We're on a good path here.
Yeah, very good path. So with that said, so you do the defense side of things.
I did.
Which
yes,
the money is
not good when you're brand new.
Yeah, I was gonna say supposed to be better, but I think you have to build up a clientele.
You do. Yes.
With that, do you think it helped you in your job as a prosecutor?
Yes.
Because you got to see the other side and understand where the arguments are going to come from.
Yes, and I think it also helps you, understand each defendant is a person, and nobody's intending to commit all these crimes and be in legal trouble. Most of the time, it's a combination of circumstances that leads people down a bad path. And I had some clients that I truly felt bad for, that I just could see. I always tell people I lived a very privileged life. I had 2 great parents and a really awesome grandma to guide me, and a close relationship with my sister. And so I have this nuclear family that is there no matter what's going on in my life. They're there for me. And a lot of my clients just didn't have that.
Yeah.
And they didn't have, I knew from, I think it was in 8th grade, the first argument I had with my mom where she threw up her hands and said, why don't you just be a lawyer or something? And I don't know what that is, but okay.
Yeah.
And even before that, my dad was hilarious. When I was born to my sister, she's 2.5 years younger than me. When I was born, he looked at me and said, I think you're going to be a CPA. And so as a child, my dad would always talk about me becoming a CPA. And then when my sister came along, that's our CPA, that's our lawyer. And then probably around 8th grade, when he realized I have 0 aptitude for math whatsoever, he was like, let's swap that. And that's exactly how it ended up. So, how much of that is Katie and I making our own decisions, and how much of that is just from birth being told, these are our expectations for you. And a lot of my clients, they didn't have that. And I had young clients, I had old clients. I had one woman, she was like in her 50s with a severe drug addiction. Nicest woman ever. Just wanted to do the right thing and just couldn't. And we got her into a rehab program, and it was that one was in Austin, so it was Travis County. And Travis County is a lot more forgiving than Williamson County is. I practice in both, and Travis County is a lot more rehabilitative. Williamson County at the time, I don't know how they are now, but was a lot more punishment oriented. This woman didn't need punishment, she needed help. And so I think that was, I mean, I remember holding her hand in court, and she was scared. She'd been through the process multiple times, but she had finally gotten out. She'd bonded out, and she was finally out, and she was really happy because she was in like a trailer, and she felt like she had her own safe space to be in. She was away from all the people that were causing her issues. And so I thought the DA is okay. He's just going to put her back in jail. He's not going to listen to any of this stuff. Thank goodness for it being Travis County, because the DA was like, wait, you're doing what? And talked with her. And we sat there and we talked all about the things that she'd been doing just to try to get better. And he said, well, what if we do this diversion program? And you're going to go to this counseling. It's a nonprofit counseling place. And you're going to go 3 times a week to this counseling place. And you're going to do community service at this place. And if you do all of that, we will defer this and get you so you're not spending any time in jail. That was exactly what she needed.
Yeah.
Going back to jail would have just set her back completely. She would have lost her housing. She would have lost the part-time job that she had. I think she was like collecting cans or something for an organization. and they maybe paid her by the can, but it was something.
Yeah.
And she felt proud of it. And had she just gone straight to jail, that all would have been gone. That would have been wiped away. So for me, dealing with that and seeing the more human side of what the defendants were going through made it so that I wasn't, this prosecutor that was just blind to that.
Yeah, callous.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, every cop has the same flip. There's a switch that happens when they first start out versus when they start getting experience. And it's different for everybody. But it's important because the idea of being a cop, I'll put it that way. When I first started, I was like, I remember I'm going to write tickets. That's that was like,
right.
That was my idea of being a cop. Like, I'm going to write all these tickets.
Right.
And then I get out there and you start talking to these people and I'm like, hey man, you got no insurance. You're I don't want to say you're callous to it, but you're like, I am the law. Like, you got that Judge Dredd about you as a cop.
Yes.
And you're like, this is just what the law says. It's just what it is. It is what it is. Not your fault, not my fault. It's how it is. And then you start to see the human side of people. You pull over a vehicle that's got insurance, but the guy has no license. He's obviously works. You see the construction stuff.
Right.
And he's trying to do the right thing.
Right.
But he's stuck in the circle.
Right.
If I tow his car, he can't get to work. He's going to get fired. And then he's never going to be able to get his license renewed.
Right.
And you just perpetuate the system as the police officer. So you can't teach that.
Right.
And it just has to be experienced. And the quicker you can flip that script in your head and see the human side of the other side of the line, so to speak, it helps you because the big picture cop. I like being the big picture cop.
Right.
I try to do that as best I can because the system's already overburdened as it is.
Right.
And so I'm the first line of defense for that, using discretion. And then it comes to the prosecutor. So if you have a prosecutor that sees that's played on the defense side first, it's kind of a big deal. It doesn't happen. I don't hear about that often.
It was a weird situation.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I did it. And I always joke now that after being a prosecutor, I'm going to be a much better defense attorney because, I think being a defense attorney showed me compassion for defendants. Being a prosecutor showed me how to attack the state's case. So I feel like I would be much better at going in and attacking the elements and being a better defense attorney than I probably was. I was a kind defense attorney and I did the best I could, but for that being my first job, I probably could have been better at it. But I had a great mentor. She helped me a lot. And I'll be honest, most of the DAs that I worked with in both counties were really helpful and kind. And I think that goes a long way too, that, a lot of people think prosecutors are just about convictions, but the criminal code of criminal procedure actually defines the prosecutor's role as not to get convictions, but to seek justice. And that comes in a lot of different ways. It's not just, convictions, get everybody put away for life. It is knowing when to be compassionate and knowing, even in a traffic ticket, exactly what you said, like knowing that if you have insurance and you're driving carefully and you're not being a reckless driver or anything, but you don't have a license because you've got surcharges from 10 years ago, or you're not able to get a driver's license for whatever reason, that's still, if you tow that car, you are going to potentially ruin their job, and they're never going to be able, then they won't even be able to maintain insurance if they don't have a paycheck, and, take them away from their families. You have no idea how long, they might sit in jail for that. And, especially if there's kids in the car, you could open up like a whole can of CPS worms and lose your job and all that kind of stuff, where just a little bit of compassion, a little bit of mercy to people goes a long way. It helps a lot. And knowing that difference. Now, that being said, you also have to recognize that there is a victim in all of this, that the general public is still at risk. You still have somebody who's driving around without a license, without insurance. They do it over and over and over again. You can't just give breaks to everybody all the time. You have to find the balance between the two. Know when you can help and know when, hey, you've had multiple opportunities to correct this issue and you refuse to do it. So now we're going to start issuing citations. Now we're going to start towing your car. Now we're going to put you in jail for a couple of days because you haven't been able to pay, or you've actively refused to pay on your tickets. So there is kind of a balance. You have to know which way to go. Generally, I try to side with a little bit of grace, but at some point, you do have to know, hey, this is your last chance. I already gave it to you. I'm very good at taking notes in cases, so I know when I've talked to somebody before and what I've told them before, and then if it pops up again and you're right back in front of me in jail, all right, well, we're done with this now. We're not having the same conversation. We're not having the same moment for grace. We're going to start talking about consequences, and maybe that's what you need.
Okay. So 2 points I want to bring up. I'm writing them down because you know how bad my memory is.
Yes.
So, you talked about, if you're law enforcement, stop and listen to me right now. If you're a police department that does not have an LPR system, Insight is offering the first 10 agencies, that means one agency apiece, gets one camera for free. You have to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you. You heard me right. If you're a police agency that does not have an LPR system yet, or does have an LPR system, and you're not happy with the product you have, Insight is offering you a free camera. No strings attached, and they will install it. I have 10 to give out. Tell them 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you, or reach out to me, and I will get you in contact. If you're a business owner or an HOA, please stop and listen to me right now. If you're just listening to the audio, do yourself a favor and watch the YouTube version of this episode to get a visual of what I'm about to tell you. I want to tell you guys about Insight LPR. It's a license plate reader. If your agency, community, or business is looking to invest in LPR to help solve and deter crime or to make your community safer, Insight LPR has my vote of confidence. I've met with their team. They know their LPRs, guys. They're the real deal. They bring over 75 years of collective experience to building LPR cameras and the software that supports communities across the country. The other thing I really like about this team is how much they listen to law enforcement. They understand the importance of working together with law enforcement and getting their input as they build and innovate products and their service to match the needs of law enforcement. In other words, when I complain or have suggestions to make their damn camera better, they actually do it. The Insight LPR team is extremely passionate and takes pride in their product development, which makes their cameras some of the most durable cameras in the market. For the gear nerds out there, what that means is this stuff's made of military grade aluminum and is nitrogen purged, whatever that means. This design makes the cameras rugged and able to withstand harsh weather elements. Here's the big selling point for me. Their nighttime scan accuracy is higher than most of the leading competitors. In my opinion, this is what sets them apart. As we know, the majority of crimes occur at night, so it's critical to have high scan accuracy at night. Insight's cameras check the box with the nighttime plate read accuracy greater than 96%. 96%, guys. That's pretty freaking high. If your community is looking to invest in LPR technology, reach out to one of their experts today, or reach out to me. Tell them 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you. Prosecutors, and the requirement is justice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever watched the movie Law Abiding Citizen?
No.
With Jamie Foxx.
And is that the one where he was a prosecutor and then his family gets killed or something?
Well, they get held kind of like
okay.
hostage in a way. But another, Gerard Butler,
yes.
the guy from 300.
I've had like 4 officers tell me I need to watch it, but here's the thing. I don't like bloody, scary movies. I have nightmares really bad.
Okay.
So everybody, when I say that, they're like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I hear it's a fantastic movie.
The premise, I'll give you the premise of the movie, is Jamie Foxx is this hotshot prosecutor, like the top, probably going to be the next higher up politically. His conviction rate's off the charts. And that's how he's basing his cases, is on this conviction rate. So that begs the question, like, I'm a cop. I've been a cop 17, 18 years. I still don't even know how prosecutors how they're evaluated. So I'm sure your convictions have something to do with it, but how do you sit back and evaluate them? Because the moral of the story for that movie was he would have rather this guy took the murder of his wife and kid to trial and lost,
right,
versus taking the lesser deal and not getting the justice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was very lucky in both cities that I worked for. I don't think I ever had a performance appraisal where conviction rate was even raised. I couldn't tell you what my conviction rate is because, I mean, I won most of my cases. I was pretty good at my job. So, but part of it went actually more into case evaluation. And it wasn't that I was afraid to take a case I wasn't going to win. But if you knew you didn't have the goods, you have an ethical, you as a prosecutor, you have an ethical obligation. You have to have probable cause in order to take a case to trial. You don't have to think you have to win it, but you at least have to have probable cause. And if I could look at a case and be like, yeah, I don't have it, why waste anybody's time? Just let it go and move on to the next one. With being, working for cities and municipal courts, we're a volume court. Municipal and justice courts deal with more cases and contacts with the public than any of the other courts combined. It is I call it the friends and family court, because eventually everybody gets a ticket and comes through a municipal court. And so there's no reason to push a case to trial that I know I can't win. Now, that being said, I'm not going to dismiss a case just because I'm not sure, or that I think, oh, this is a good case, but the defense attorney is really good. I don't want to mess up my conviction rate. I don't care about that. For us, both places I worked, the evaluations they had, my chief prosecutors would come down and watch me in trial, watch my skill set. How did she do during voir dire? How did she do during cross-examination? They would look at, how quickly I'm processing things. Do I have cases that I drag on and continue over and over again? Am I responding to my discovery requests in a timely manner? If I was continually losing cases, I think the conversation wouldn't be about the fact that I was losing, but more about what is going on in your case evaluation that you're not seeing why this is a good case or a bad case, or what's going on in trial where you're lacking a certain skill. So, and that's hard as a prosecutor to be able to look at a case and be able to say, hey, this is, I'm missing some evidence here, or I'm really not sure that a jury is going to, fine for this. It's something that you learn over time. So I definitely lost more cases at the beginning of my career and, doing things silly like missing elements. Twice in my career, I forgot to prove that it happened in the state of Texas. That's a jurisdictional thing. So if you don't prove it happens in the state of Texas, you can't get a conviction on it. So, if that kind of stuff happens, okay, fine, whatever. It's not a big deal. But, if you're not learning from that, I'm embarrassed that it happened twice. Also, one time I proved up my case that it happened, each and every element, but I said the wrong city. I had just moved from Dallas. And so I was like, this happened in the city of Dallas. And the officer is so used to, yes, yes, yes. He didn't catch it, and the judge did. And so the judge let me go all the way through. And then when I closed my case, he was like, well, I do believe that you were speeding, but unfortunately the prosecutor from Dallas kept saying Dallas, so I'm going to find you not guilty. And it's like, I'm so sorry. My apologies. So I used to, when I very first, I had to write my city like on top of my page so that I could remember the city and the state and check that off. And then at the very end, in case I forgot it or didn't remember what I said, I'd be like, and officer, just one more question. This did happen in the city that we work for.
Yeah.
He's like, okay.
All right. So, okay.
My bad.
I got a question on that because
Okay.
that's kind of irritating to me hearing that a technicality and the judge knew. The judge knew. I mean, absolutely knew you messed up.
He laughed. He thought it was hilarious. I think it's hilarious now.
And didn't make a correction.
It's not the judge's job.
It isn't the job, but it's the spirit of the law.
No.
What?
Not at all. The judge is the neutral arbitrator. So the judge is not responsible for the prosecutor doing the right thing or the defense doing the right thing. The judge is the neutral person. The judge is just there to call the game. But just like you don't want to have an unfair ref in a football game, you do not want to have an unfair judge.
I don't look at that as being unfair. I look at that as just doing, it'd be no different if you had something sitting on your face and they're like, hey, you got something. Yeah. Like, get that. Like, yeah. That's to say it's just a courtesy.
No, because think about how many times, especially in municipal courts, how many times people are practicing pro se, meaning they're representing themselves. So does that mean that the judge should help the defendant because, they're representing themselves? They don't have the same skill set. Would you want me to be like, all right, defendant? So a lot of times an example of that would be like pictures. If the defendant brings in a picture that they want put into evidence that literally has nothing to do with the case, happens all the time, but they want this picture brought in, then they have to know the proper way to do it. If you choose to represent yourself, you're going to be held to the same rules. The judge is going to call the same game, whether you're an attorney or whether you're an unrepresented defendant. So at that point, the judge can't just say, okay, oh, I'm sorry, the prosecutor is objecting to you putting in these pictures. I'm going to tell you the proper way to do it. If you were sitting there as an officer on the stand, would you want the judge telling the defendant how to introduce photos and evidence?
I get that. But that one that you're talking about just seems like such a stupid, simple, like.
It is stupid simple. The prosecutor should know that.
Okay, I get it.
Well, and the burden is on the state in every single case. The burden on the state is to prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt. That includes the state. That includes not just proving up how the LiDAR works. It's every element. And if the state doesn't meet their burden, that's not the judge's problem. And it's not the defendant's problem.
Fair enough. Okay. Before we move to the judge stuff.
Okay.
Because we're building that path.
We're I see this. You see the path. We're getting there.
We're getting there. So discretion. So
yes.
Me as a cop, I can't let felonies go.
Right.
Like that's about the extent of my discretion. I can, all the civil stuff, things of that nature. But once we start getting into the felony realm, I have no say.
Right.
And then that goes for warrants technically as well.
Yes.
So technically, if I pull you over and you've got a warrant, the warrant states that I shall bring you before the judge.
Yes.
But we both know,
right?
That's not how the system works.
No, it's not. For mostly traffic warrants. Let's make that clear. We're talking about the warrants I issue from the bench, not the murder warrants that I sign.
Exactly. So it's the education portion for citizens and stuff, and I want you to understand that, like, there's the way that the law is written and there's the way that it's practiced out in the field, and that goes with cops and prosecutors and all that stuff. So if you got traffic ticket warrants, I mean, technically, yeah, I am supposed to bring you to the judge. But being in a big city like where I am, and the courts are inundated with cases as it is,
right?
We don't.
Right.
And that's just kind of the way that the law's approved, I guess. Unapproved? I don't know how to even put that.
I laugh because I get this all the time where, and kind of one of the things, the downside of that is that for the public, so you might not arrest them, but 3 days later, somebody else does. And then they say, I didn't know I had these warrants. I just got pulled over. And I can see, oh yeah, there's these tickets that you got. They didn't bother to tell you have warrants.
Oh no, I tell them.
So that's my thing. Like, my pet peeve is tell people they have warrants. Okay, fine. I'm not going to arrest you on these. I'm making the decision not to arrest you on these. Another officer may choose to. So here's the court's contact information.
Yes.
And I actually had an officer who we were talking about that because I was so angry because I could see this guy had warrants, a lot of them. And
what's a lot to you?
Like 10.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a lot, but it was a lot of, I've had one that's had like 70 warrants before.
64 is my record.
I was like, it does happen. The hell? How do you get that many? I know, but.
I figured it out.
Well, so what was funny about this guy is, he had actually assaulted a police officer. He's kind of a frequent flyer around here, and I had issued warrants on all of his traffic cases, and then the officer stopped him and wrote him more tickets. So I could tell that I saw the date that I issued the warrant, and then I could tell the date that the traffic tickets were issued.
So he had to have seen them.
He had to have seen them.
You had to run them. So,
correct.
Yeah.
And then he didn't do anything about it. And then something else happened. I can't remember that when he came in front of me, I think he ended up getting arrested on him. And when I was dealing with him, he ended up being rude, less than happy with the services he received from me at the jail. And I ended up having to hold him in contempt. So I was talking to the officer. I was like, you realize that's a court order. Like, it says you shall arrest and bring before a magistrate. Hello, I'm right here. So we worked out an agreement that, he basically said the same thing. Like, I'm busy. I don't have time for this. And yeah, he is.
Oh man, and you do it to one of the nice judges.
Well, he was not intending to be mean, and we've talked about it. We're friends. It's fine. Yeah. But I said, well, my problem with this is he does have these warrants, and eventually somebody is going to pick him up on him. And I get very frustrated where people are like, I didn't know I had these warrants. I've been stopped 4 times. Just educate. It's all about educating somebody. Yep. I don't care if you arrest somebody on their warrants. I'm fine with you making that decision not to. But give the courts information. Everybody has access to that. We have our court has online now. One of the great things about the pandemic is forcing us to move towards a little bit more online presence.
As a detective, I love it.
I know.
Oh my God.
Well, I will say probably 50-50 with detectives. A lot of them like the virtual. A lot of them really don't. So,
well, we do lose because you get new judges in there, and
right.
you lose that relationship with the judge because it's always the same. At least for me, you get a new judge, and you're like eggshells because
Right.
you just don't know. Because from a cop's perspective, judges have a lot of power,
Mm-hmm.
and a judge could not like what you're wearing that day and tell you, go change. Don't disrespect my court. That's never happened to me.
I was gonna say I doubt that would happen with you, but yeah,
But
I
I've
mean,
seen it happen.
I believe that. I've heard those stories.
Yeah.
I think our judicial staff is amazing. I think I have a different perspective because I did practice in front of every single full-time judge that we have. I've appeared in front of as a prosecutor, and so I know them to be all upstanding people. I don't, especially when you're dealing with warrants, or especially if you're coming into the jail. I don't see any reason for a dress code. I mean, frankly, you can't. We have the UCs come in and they have their little ninja hats on and all that kind of stuff. But, I try to be very cognizant of, that'd be like me telling a defendant who gets brought to jail, okay, go change, and they're dressed completely inappropriate. I'm sorry. Like,
I do get that.
You have to just kind of laugh and be like, you know what? That's not the shirt I would wear to court, but you're here. You didn't come here by choice. Let's just move on from it. And I kind of think I'm the same way with officers. I know, especially with the UCs, I know they're going to come in and they're not going to look like police officers. They're not going to be clean shaven and crew cuts. They're going to look like they're UCs. And the better they are at the job, the scarier they're going to look walking in my door. And I'm good with that.
Now, with the discretion portion, because we don't, like I said, felonies as a patrol officer, you got nothing. There's nothing you can do. Whether you witness a felony, whatever it is, you've got to act. And that's just the nature of the beast. However, as a detective, I have seen felony cases that I've presented go up and just get dismissed. It was there.
Right.
But they were like, no, we're working with this person. They're going to get us this or whatever it is. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like that.
I worked really hard on this.
And so, and that is part of it. You do get emotional. Me personally, it's my personality type. It hurts my feelings. Like, cause I really do. Like I put a lot, not that I put a lot of work. I don't want to sound like
you do put a lot of work.
If the victim, if I have a true victim, you definitely see me put everything I got into it.
Right.
And, I hate saying that for people listening, but there's true victims and there's victims. There's differences. You got a guy that was drug dealing and he gets shot, while carrying an illegal weapon and stuff like that. Like, to me, that's not a true victim. He was out doing stuff he shouldn't have done. He would have never been in that situation had he not put himself in this illegal world. But
what? A victim is a victim to me.
That's why I say you're a judge. That's where you're at. And so there's just now, God, I walked myself right into a hole, but it's not that I'm not going to do my job. It's just I'm not emotionally in it the way that I would be.
Well, we all are that way. We have emotional bandwidth and there's only so much of it. So whether you want to go to the person that you really feel is, completely clean hands, no faults whatsoever. But the bottom line is that's easy. But going to bat for the victim that you don't like or that you don't think is really a victim, you still go to work for them. I know you do.
I do.
I read your warrants. I know exactly how you are. You say that, but that's the hard part. That's where you show true integrity is, hey, I've had victims on family violence cases. I don't like my victim. That's just going to make me try the case harder because I know that they still deserve justice just the same as the little old lady who gets knocked down and have her purse stolen that everybody loves. The unlikable victim deserves the same amount of justice and the same amount of commitment from me.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that, what is the discretionary line that prosecutors have? Because like I said, I've had felony cases and I follow up on my cases every time. So I'm like, what'd this guy get? What'd this guy get? I want to see. And then all of a sudden I see like deferred. Like, I'm like, what the hell? So I'll try to get a hold of somebody and they're like, oh, we had some stuff going on the side. So what is that? How can they do that?
So I tell people I get this complaint all the time. Like, I worked really hard on this and the DAs just won't take my case or whatever. That's their realm.
But they're allowed to do that
They are
without
allowed to do
conferring
it.
with the
They
judge.
are in charge of their cases. They get to make the decisions. I also remind you, they have the malpractice insurance. We don't. So they have to make those decisions based off of whatever they think is best. Like I said, a prosecutor has to have probable cause on each and every element in order to even consider taking a case forward to trial. And then on top of that, when they do go to trial, they have to believe that they can prove each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is a really high burden.
Right.
And the other thing that I'll remind you of, and particularly after the last couple of years, is at least I say this in my court, trial space is a hot commodity real estate.
Yeah.
There's only so many cases you can take to trial a year. There's only so much time, so many jurors, so much time you can hold up a courtroom. The way that our criminal justice system is that it necessitates plea bargains for a couple of reasons. One, there's just not that many courts to try things in. And two, while we're waiting for trial, you have people who are sitting in jail. And you can't keep people who can't bond out sitting in jail longer than the actual punishment range would be. And that happens. And so prosecutors have to look at all of that kind of stuff. And prosecutors look at the case and say, hey, this is a really good case and this is a really bad person and I really want them to go to jail. Or, hey, this is an okay case and I really like the defendant and they've got a great attorney who's advocating for them and this is one I can plea out. And it has nothing to do with you personally. It's just like if I find no PC on something, it's not because I don't like you.
Right.
It's part of our jobs and they're not taking your feelings into consideration at all. It would be nice if they could tell you their reasons so that way you can learn from it. But I tell people, don't worry about what the prosecutors are going to do. They're going to do their job. You just worry about doing your job. And I get really frustrated whenever anybody says to me, well, I'm not filing that because the DA's office won't take it. That's not your call whether they take it or not. File it.
Yeah.
Do your job. And then if they say no, you know you did your job. You take pride in your own work. Let them take pride in their work. And whatever they do is no personal reflection on you. And it is frustrating. You know, we were talking at the beginning. Your question was, how much power do judges really have? Compared to prosecutors, not much. I mean, the prosecutors are the ones that drive the cases. They're the ones that get to decide what case goes to trial or what case gets dismissed or what offer to make. They have all the power when you're dealing with individual cases.
Where's the checks and balances in that? Who's overseeing to make sure that they aren't being lazy?
Well, I think if it were a consistent problem, you know, obviously there's the elected official, currently Sharon Wilson in Tarrant County, and Phil Sorrell's just won for next year. So the elected officials, they have an administrative branch. They're chiefs, and there is a hierarchy in there. And I think if you have a problem with one particular prosecutor over and over again, you go up through their chain of command. Just like if you have a problem with an officer, you go up the chain of command. I think there's also, you know, in our area, in Texas, there's public information requests. You know, if you're concerned and you want to see if there's a pattern of things, you know, you can always put in public information requests, get whatever information you have. I know when I was a prosecutor, my chief was the one who oversaw my cases. You know, they would, like I said, they don't care. None of my bosses ever cared whether I won or lost, but they cared that I was trying, that I wasn't just dismissing everything. And, you know, I had a chain of command that if somebody wanted to complain about me, they could go up and same as a judge. I have a chief and a deputy chief that if you don't like what I'm doing, you know, take it to my boss. And just like any other job. But the prosecutors, at least the elected official, is accountable to the public. So if we don't like something that we're seeing in the prosecutor's office over and over and over again, we hold the elected official accountable. They get elected. So we as a public can say, hey, we don't like what we're seeing. We don't like the changes in the DA's office, or we do. We love what's going on and keep doing it. And they're up for re-election. I think it's every 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, like if they've got that type of power, which I didn't know. I didn't know. So they've got full discretion on the cases that can get pushed through, what don't. I would love it because this show's about improving things. One of the things I would love, and I've never had this problem personally. Anytime I've had a case that I've sent in,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, I need this. Like, these are
Right.
the things I need to get this to go through. I'm like, okay, brain fart. I should have put, yes,
Right.
the elements are there. I just didn't articulate it.
Right.
That was my fault. Okay,
Yes.
cool. So there's a learning curve, especially
Right.
when you're a new detective. But sometimes there have been cases that I just, they accepted. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next thing I know, it's gone. And I'm like, why did this get pled out? I had the elements for this. And you
Right.
don't hear shit. And I'm
Right.
like, if I had the elements, like, why did this get pled out? Like, what is the deal? And so one of the things I just learned, just kind of like you said, I really didn't think about, to me, if the need to go to trial is there, go to trial. Like, but you're only allotted, I guess you got to kind of pick and choose.
Right. Think about every
Yeah.
case you filed this year, and you figure trials are, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, best case scenario in, 10, 15 courts. Could you get through all of your cases? If every single one of the cases that you filed on this year went to trial, could you get done with it in a year?
No.
Yeah. And then times that by the department.
Yeah, and then times that by the
By
county.
multiple departments.
Yeah, within
Exactly.
the county. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Prosecutors are overworked. They're busy too.
It's
They
true.
have to, I always used to say, I try the cases I have to. That there are some that this, especially in the traffic world, anybody who has a CDL is going to go to trial on it because they have nothing to lose. Family violence cases tend to go to trial. Theft cases tend to go to trial. You try the cases you have to. But, back when I was very first starting to be a prosecutor in Dallas, we were filing about 400,000 traffic tickets a year. We had 10 trial courts Monday through Friday, and it was from 8 to noon and then 1 to 5. So we could do 2 jury trials a day. That didn't put a dent in 400,000.
Wow.
You just can't.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game.
Huh. So with the pandemic, has the courts considered a new way to start moving cases through virtual?
Our municipal court, we went virtual so fast. That was Judge Atkinson. A lot of he was already wanting to do that. The pandemic just speeded up what we were already planning. So we did. We had very little downtime. We ended up going to the virtual warrants pretty quickly, and that caught on like wildfire.
I mean, it's very efficient.
It is. It is very efficient. Well, here's what I'll say. It's efficient in that for y'all, you get to multitask, which is great. Like, okay, I sent the email to the judge, 20 minutes, I can work on stuff. You're not driving. That's fine. For poor Judge Summers, she gets like 40 warrants a day.
We do more.
A lot more.
Yeah.
And that has been a common misunderstanding in our court is that, when you had to come in, you would kind of bring them all at once, bring me 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. And, we'd have a conversation. But even just the physical signing, like I read faster on paper, I sign my name faster on paper, having to go through and put stamps on everything takes a lot longer. It takes me where I could do an in-person warrant in probably a minute if it was a pretty easy, elements, simple case. Sign it, be done with it. Clerk puts a number on it, and you're done.
Yeah.
It's at least 10 minutes of my day, even for the most simplest case. By the time you call the clerk, say, "Hey, who's my judge working tonight?" Clerk sends out the link, or I send out the link. I'm very type A, so my clerks are like, "Just send an email to Judge Houston." I don't need them involved in that. So I send my link out, and then you log in, and then we have to deal with the technology issues. Okay, you can't hear me. Try this, try that. Then we finally do the swearing in. Then I have to wait for you to go scan it and bring it back, get it back. I have to wait for the audio or the video to get sent to me. That's, a minimum of 10 minutes, and you're doing 40 of those a day. I don't know how Judge Summers has time to breathe or eat.
Right.
And yes, our numbers are significantly higher than they used to be.
Because it promotes us as
Right.
cops, like it's not such a burden for us,
Right.
and we're like, oh, my job's easier now.
Right. Here, I'll just send this link.
All the people are getting these things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I love it.
I know. I miss the in-person stuff.
For sure.
I'm a bad millennial. I really am. I love in-person. So
I'm with you.
My nighttime detectives all come in mostly. I mostly do in-person at this point. There's a few that still do virtual. But for the most part at night, they're on their way home. They're like, I'll just swing by and say hi and visit for a few minutes and, and it's good because then I learn what's going on and kind of have an idea of what's going on in our city and
Yeah.
what problems we're facing or what to expect. And I
Yeah.
enjoy that.
Well, it with the judges that because you work later, but
Mhm.
the judges that I talk to for the most part, we BS a little bit prior to handling business,
Mhm.
before we go on official recording and all that stuff. So it's always nice. And like I said, Judge Summers she's awesome.
She is.
She's been in the game for so long. It's just fun watching. I like watching. This is the other cool part. For those who don't know, when we're doing our warrants and we're swearing in front of a webcam and you got the judge, but you also have all these other detectives in queue,
Mhm.
and we can watch. We can see all the stuff going on, and so you'll see other detectives when you see the newer ones, and you just see the judge like, "Come back to me when you got your stuff together."
Right.
Levine, you got your stuff. Yeah, Judge, I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Right.
Because it is quick once you
It
you have the
is.
system down,
Right.
and you don't have the technology issues, and you know exactly what's
Right.
going on. If she can't hear you, oh, my mic's muted. Let me get that real quick. Hey, Judge, what's up? So
Right. Yeah.
I love it, and I like watching her try to figure stuff out.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
She's been a great mentor to me when I became a judge, and I'm really glad that she took that jail position because we work really well. And then the judge that comes in after me, Judge Kelman, is fantastic. So the three of us have such a good working relationship handling, the jail and the warrant stuff that it's a very productive part of our courts.
So how did that transition happen? How do you go from prosecutor to judge? Because I know some judges are elected. Some people, you don't even have to be a lawyer, I found out. This was like in the last couple of years. There's a cop I work with. He became a judge.
Yes.
I'm like, how did you're not a lawyer.
So let's be clear. In the city that we work for, every single judge is a lawyer. I have actually run into that as an issue in this department where people were unhappy with me and decided, well, it's because she's not a lawyer. We can't listen to what she has to say. Yeah, that's not true.
What?
I have a law degree. Yes.
Oh my God. Like, was this from other attorneys or was this
No, it's from a
citizens?
group of officers. No,
Cops?
it's from cops. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. So that's been cleared up, I believe. But just to be sure, I am actually a lawyer.
Melanie Houston is
attorney at law.
Is an attorney. She's got her law degree.
As does every judge in our city.
That's hilarious. Maybe it's your demeanor. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I just think you're very personable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I try to be. In fact, I have a new clerk. And this week we were talking about something, and she's like, you're very approachable, and I try to be that way.
Yeah.
Whether when I was a prosecutor, defense attorneys coming to me, in court, with defendants, I try to make them feel comfortable asking questions if they don't know what's going on. My clerks, I tell my clerks 100% they are the most important people in my courtroom because they are the gatekeepers. They're the ones that when you're calling and saying, hey, does the judge have time for a warrant? They can either be like, oh yeah, sure, send her a warrant. And there's like 1,000 people ahead of you. Or they'll say, she's got a line, I'll send her the notice, but she's got a line. You want to come back in an hour or whatever. They tell me who's coming in. They have really great relationships with like the officers who work, like the detectives who do the SWAT warrants. They call ahead and say, hey, we're coming in, gun violence. Hey, we're coming in. They tell me, hey, we're not going to pull people for arraignment. We're not going to tie you up because this is what's coming at you. So I have fantastic clerks that run things for me. And, I try to be approachable so that they feel comfortable running things, Hey, no, judge, we're not going to do this. I would say, do we have time to do arraignment, or let's pull our class C's? And they'll be like, no, don't do that. So they know what's happening. So I try to be as approachable as possible. And that includes officers, I have a great group of officers who come back just to say hi and maintain relationships. But then when I do have a problem, or that's how I find out things like, hey, that this entire group doesn't know that you're a lawyer, I can say, well, you can tell them this.
Yeah.
And, kind of.
Here's me on graduation day.
Yes, here I am. There's, on my wall, there's a law degree.
Yeah.
So yes. So in our city, and I believe all of the cities in Tarrant County, the municipal court judges are all attorneys. So, but yes, JPs don't have to be.
So how's the selection process? Like,
so for us,
you apply for a job. I want
for
to be
our
a judge.
city, yes, for our city, it's an appointment by city council, And so I was appointed in 2018, November of 2018 for the first time. So I'm going on 4 years. There are 2 judges currently on our municipal court staff that went directly from being a prosecutor to going to the bench. So Judge Martinez also was a prosecutor for the city and then ended up getting appointed. I literally went to work on a Monday morning as a prosecutor and Tuesday morning got sworn in as a judge. So
you had no idea?
I knew, but
Okay.
it was more of just awkward timing. So I applied for the position. I went through the interview process. The first round of interviews was with our chief judge, our deputy chief, and then the courts director, the director of our municipal court. And so went through that interview process. I think they interviewed maybe 8-10 people. So you apply, you put in your resume and your application just like any other job. The requirements for our city were that you had to have practiced law. I think the state requires you have to practice law for 2 years. So you have to have a law license and you have to have been practicing in a good standing with a bar. And then you also have to, you have to be a licensed attorney. So I went through that process. They recommended, I think maybe 5 of us for the next round of interviews. And the next round of interviews was with the city council municipal court committee. And so there were, I think, 4 council members, plus my chief, our chief Judge Rogers. He was in that. I don't think he asked any questions, but he was there just to listen. And then at the end of those interviews, city council made recommendations for who to hire. We had 2 open positions. So they hired me and then an outside judge who actually came from Dallas, Judge Abuji, got hired on at the same time as I did. And then once they make that offer, you do have to go in front of the full city council and the full city council votes on you. So we went to a city council meeting. They all voted yes. That at that time was a little bit more of a formality because once the committee had picked you, unless there was a really good reason not for the council, I don't want to take it for granted, but I felt fairly confident there was no reason why council would say, oh, no, we don't like her.
Yeah. Now, with that, one of the things that concerns me anytime city council gets involved with anything is politics. And being some sort of political agenda being mixed in with my court system that I don't think has any business being there, which is kind of one of the problems I have when we have an election for our DA.
Right.
Like, why does their political affiliation have anything to do with our DA?
There shouldn't. It shouldn't.
I had Tiffany Burks on, and
I love Tiffany.
Yeah, great person. Her episode hasn't even aired yet, but she had to go for a Democratic nominee, and I asked her that specific question. I was like, why does it say Democrat? Why does that matter? I'm like, because I know her is working relationship, and I'm like, she's a great prosecutor. She goes after bad guys,
right?
And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, when somebody sees in a red state like we're in,
right,
and they see Democratic, like she's not gonna get a fair shake,
right?
And I don't understand that. So for you going for a judge, is that a concern, the politics being involved at all?
So for our council, because it's a council appointed thing, my political, I don't have a party. I'm not part of any party.
And you don't have to divulge any of that?
Don't have to.
Okay.
Most people know me personally, kind of know my political opinions, but no, I mean, they don't have any bearing on my job at all. And our city council is fantastic in knowing that. It doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter for Tiffany or anybody. It shouldn't matter when you're in a position in the legal field. You're stuck. You know, like you're going to do the job, and the law is the law, and your own personal opinion. Thanks. Your own personal political beliefs have no bearing on your job, and it's funny because most people in the jail kind of know me and they know where I stand, and so they make fun of me all the time for different things, but I had a situation where there was a law I strongly disagreed with, and everybody knew I strongly disagreed with it, but I pulled the law and I read it, and it was on the books, and I was like, you know what? Then my job is not to agree or disagree with the law. My job is to find whether or not the officer has probable cause, and I find that they do. So against my personal opinion, I'm going to sign this because that's what's required of me. That is my job, to be fair and impartial, not let my personal opinions play into anything.
Yeah.
And so, of course, everybody's making fun of me at the jail because, it's a small area. They know
Yeah.
me. They're laughing. It was a funny story. And I said, at the very end of the day, laugh all you want, but I hope you see that, and a lot of us are on very different political spectrums. And I said, I hope you see that no matter what, I'm going to be fair and impartial at my job. And you know how I feel about this, but I still did my job.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what you want from a judge. You want somebody who's going to be able to put aside all of that. So for our city council, that was never an issue. I think they've really, like I said, I have a lot of respect for our judges. I don't feel like anybody shouldn't be there. We all work hard. Judge Rogers says we're all highly educated type A's who all think we're right all the time. So we do. But I mean, I do say we get reappointed every 2 years. So if I, go off the deep end, it'd be pretty easy to get rid of me. And I think we get appointed in the even years. So,
Yeah.
city council could be like, thanks, bye. And that is a fear. I mean, councils change, so they may come in and not like what we're doing. But with our city, I think our council really understands judges are a separate branch of the government. You have to keep that in mind, that we are a separate, equal branch of the government. We are equal to city council. We don't answer to them. Yes, they get to put us in our jobs, but once we're there, I don't answer to them why I rule on a case or anything. Frankly, I don't answer to anybody why I rule on the case. My case decisions are mine. So, even if Judge Rogers disagrees with me, it's my decision to make.
Right.
And I think that's a little bit sometimes hard to understand. I think it really came to a head during the pandemic. A lot of times, people, we had very strict rules on wearing masks in the court and when we would require it. And even though the governor would say one thing, the courts would say another. People are like, well, the governor says you don't have to do that. Well, okay, but we're a different, equal branch of the government. And the Supreme Court says we can make those rules. And our decisions were based off of the fact that you're requiring people to come to court. It's not an option. You don't have an option to be like, no, thanks, I don't want to do that. We're mandating people come to court. If you don't come to court, you end up with a warrant for your arrest. So we have to make sure that we're making everybody feel comfortable with that. And when we'd explain that, everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, that kind of came out as a interesting experience when, everybody was like, the city council doesn't have those rules. Well, the city council is a different branch of the government. We're going to do our part. So
yeah,
it is kind of an interesting dichotomy because they do appoint us, but we don't answer to them.
Okay. I'm going to kind of take us down a little different path while it's in my brain.
Okay.
Sovereign citizens.
Love them.
I bet you do.
They're so fantastic.
So
you get that.
At the basic level, from a judge's perspective,
yes,
when they do this nonsense on the side of the road with a cop,
yes,
I have been able to diffuse several by just telling them, look, all this stuff that you're trying, a lot of times it's just talking over you tactic that they try to do. And I'm a very patient person. That comes with experience. But I'm like, at the bottom level, your argument can't be made here on the side of the road. The place to argue is in the court.
Right.
And if you're right,
thanks for that,
and I'm wrong, you're going to make me look like an idiot. So, and if I have violated your rights, like you keep saying, you're going to win a lot of money. So let's take it down that path. And that has worked for me. Other than I've had to get supervisors a couple times because they don't even want to, they're just going down the steps. But, as a judge, what the fuck? I don't even know how you begin to start dealing with that.
Oh, it's difficult.
It's got to be entertaining.
It is. Well, and I'm lucky. We haven't really established my job as a judge. Clearly I've said a couple times I work in the jail. So I'm not in a trial court. I don't preside over a trial court. So I get to do the same thing.
But as a prosecutor, you definitely
as a prosecutor, I did. So at the jail, I get to do the same thing where this is not a trial court. And I say, look around. This is not a trial court. This is just, we're processing you. And my intention is I'd like to get you out of here and back on the street. So we're going to go through the process now. This is what the process is. And at the end of it, if we follow instructions and we do what we're supposed to do, the end result is you're going to be released. If you continue to disrespect me or you say things that are disrespectful, we might have to end in a different result. And I don't want to do that. So what I'm asking for you right now is I'm putting this on the record. I just merely need you to be quiet for a few minutes while I read you the rights, which I think you would like to hear. Since, you seem to know them, I think you'd like to hear them on the record. And then we'll just set it forward to a court date if that's what you're wanting to do. And I think the calmer you are, the better it is. It's definitely frustrating, but for the most part, that works. Now, as a prosecutor, you kind of just get to the point where, like, you're going to a jury trial. You're going to a jury trial. So there's really not much you're going to do to talk to them individually. You're just going to set up the process. And the reason why you're going to a jury trial is here in the state of Texas, traffic tickets are criminal offenses. That means all of the criminal protections apply. The same constitutional rights that you get for trying a murder case, you get for a traffic ticket. And so in order to do something other than a jury trial, you have to waive those rights. We both know the sovereign citizens aren't going to waive anything. Right. So you just know in advance. But the secret is to just not write them off, because they'll file motion after motion, and you have to be careful as a prosecutor that there's not something valid in those motions. You have to read them. They might seem like nonsense and gobbledygook to start, but if there's any bit of truth or any kernel of like a request for discovery or something, and you don't acknowledge it, you don't read through it, you just throw it off your desk and say, I'm not going to deal with this, you could end up getting yourself in trouble. So you still have to treat the cases like you would anything else. You just kind of have the benefit of knowing the end result is we're going to end up in a jury trial.
Okay. And what is it that they're going? Because the laws of Confederacy, I know is a big one. They're going off like this outdated or something called Black's Law.
Well, Black's Law Dictionary is an actual dictionary.
That's the one,
yeah,
right?
That's the one that defines everything.
Okay.
So maybe, if it's not in the code, then you defer back to Black's Law, and if it's not in Black's Law, then you can use regular dictionary. But that's kind of how the process of interpreting words goes. There's a couple of different forms of it. Some of them go off of the Uniform Commercial Code. So a lot of times they'll claim that they're not a corporation, that they're a person. That's how you know I'm not a corporation. Okay. That's your red flag right there. A lot of them think that the 16th Amendment, I think it is, wasn't ratified properly. And so therefore, nothing applies. A lot of them just think that, Texas doesn't belong as a part of the U.S. And I did have one situation where that was what he said. He said, I'm a citizen of the Republic of Texas. I don't follow your federal laws. And I said, sir, I'm a judge for Texas. I'm not a judge. I'm not a federal judge. I am a judge here for Texas. I'm licensed in the state in Texas. I didn't say state. I said I'm licensed in Texas. So can we work from that premise that you're a citizen of Texas and I'm a judge for Texas? And he was like, well, I guess. I said, okay. I said,
got him.
I said to you, I can show you my law license if you want to see it. It says Texas right on it. And he said, no, I believe you. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about what's going on here. Yeah. So this is what you've got. And
you got me.
he did. He ended up kind of being a little bit confused, and then
this worked on YouTube.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of times, so it's funny with my dad being an IRS agent, he also dealt with a lot of Republic of Texas, but he had a lot better resources to dealing with them. So, yes. The feds don't play. So he did quite a few audits where he was out in this, there was like a whole community of them somewhere outside of Austin, and he just systematically just went after, this, and ended up, people just ended up moving. They were just like, we're done. So they sold their homes and moved, and I guess problem solved. But,
right.
It's still, I think with anybody, if you approach it the right way, having a conversation, listening, it's really about people being heard, being listened to, knowing that I firmly believe if you know the process, what's going to happen, you're able to understand and leave with a little bit more understanding and helpfulness and say, hey, I don't necessarily like that I got taken to jail on this, and I really don't like that, my day to fight is in court another day. But at least I was given that opportunity. And I find the more I explain what the process is, the quieter people get and stop arguing. It's like, it's the fear of the unknown that makes people start acting that way. Well, okay, let's take that away. Let's tell you what's going to happen. I definitely learned I had to change my wording around. I used to say, I'm going to release you. I've had to add, my intention is to release you, because I've had to say I'm going to release you, and then when they cursed at me, it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So my intention is to release you. And then that also puts them on notice, like, okay, this is her plan, but it could change if I misbehave.
Right. And it takes away that implicate or impression of power.
Right.
Like, you know, because
Right.
ultimately that's what I found as a cop, is that it's just a semblance of power.
Yeah.
They need some control over what's going on.
Right.
And I'll give you as much control as I comfortably can. And that comes down to just a basic level stop. If I
Right.
know I'm stopping a guy that I fully intend to arrest and bring in, because that's where I'm at in my career now, is I'm not dealing with just random
Right.
traffic stops.
Right.
Hey, this is what's going on. This is why I've stopped you. This is what's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
With that said, like, what's going on? Tell me. I want to give them a chance to tell their story, give them a chance to, you know, whatever it is, but you give them a level of control back, and life
Right.
becomes so much easier. Now it's real interesting because you don't get these conversations with the judge. You know what I mean? From your position, like, you never hear. You hear from cops the most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're the face of the criminal justice system, so
Right.
you get to hear this a lot. So I think people are really going to appreciate just one perspective, which is interesting because we haven't even gotten to the federal level.
Right.
We've touched on it a little bit. So let me get your perspective on marijuana. Okay, so. I'm not asking you to for or against anything like that, because
I have mixed opinions.
it has no bearing.
Uh-huh.
What I really want to get at is it's still federally illegal,
It's still illegal in the state.
and then it's illegal in the state,
Mhm.
but it's not illegal in other states.
Correct.
So there's this weird dichotomy with that.
Correct.
As a judge, what can you educate people on, as far as, like, let's say I get this guy and he's got 15 pounds of weed.
Right.
What makes that a federal case versus keeping it state versus what?
I honestly don't know.
You don't even know?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
No. I've never practiced federal law. You know, it's funny. I'll be talking to officers and they'll be like, oh, yeah, we're going to take this to the feds. Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
that decision happens outside of my court. I see what's in front of me. But, you know, it's funny. Marijuana is one of those things where everybody has an opinion on it. I have mixed opinions, but it's on the books. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that whether I agree with the law or not, it's on the books. And that's one example where I guess for a while the DA's office wasn't taking them, or I don't know, because I never know what their
They're still
goals
pretty
are.
much not. If it's under like 2 ounces or whatever, like,
Right.
they're definitely not. Because I guess the cost.
Right. Well, again,
that's a factor. Like,
it is. Let's talk about priorities. You know,
Yeah.
do you want to tie up a trial court dealing with possession of marijuana when we could be dealing with an assault family violence case? You know, it's a balancing act, and it's entirely up to the DAs to make that decision
right.
based off of their needs. I'm fine with that. What I was not okay with is when people would come in and say, well, the DA's office isn't going to take it, so I'm not filing it anymore. And I had a conversation with one of our jail sergeants, and I'm like, that's not my call. I'm not going to no PC something just because I think the DA's office isn't going to take it.
Yeah.
Because the DA's office will eventually say, oh, we never said that. We'll take whatever you bring us. You know,
Yeah.
that's their call. They're the ones that get to make that decision. But they don't get to tell officers, don't arrest somebody for this. And I don't get to say, well, I'm not going to find probable cause because I know the DA's office isn't going to take it. It is still a law in the books. It's still in the discretion of the officer. I don't care if you file it or not. But if you bring it to me and you have the probable cause in every element, as long as it's still on the books, I'm going to sign off on it. And the jail sergeants know that. So for a while we had none. Now we're kind of back to, I think, Judge Summers and Judge Kelman, you know, all the jail judges kind of feel the same way on it. We don't have the discretion of being like, hey, I don't like this law. Don't bring me any more of these. That's not our job. Our job is to read the affidavits, determine whether there's probable cause, sign it, and move on.
I've said many times on this show, I wish it would just be legal. That's my personal opinion on it, because it is so annoying.
It is. I can see there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of reasons why it should be legal. I think there's some way it can't. Least of which is I just really hate the smell.
Oh, yes.
If nothing else, I'm like,
Yes.
I don't want that. You know, if you go to Vegas now, it just stinks all the time.
Yeah.
And then, my dad died of lung cancer. So smoking in general, anything, I'm anti, I don't like it. I don't want it. So, and then I think there's some legal questions about it. The smell of marijuana in a vehicle gets a lot of officers to be able to search a car.
Yeah.
So, I think the department probably needs to start thinking about retraining if it does become legalized. That's not a reason to search a car anymore. So, that might affect some of our stops.
Okay. You bring up a good point, because I wanted to talk about probable cause versus reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
I am seeing a trend amongst detectives.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
I'm scared now.
I'm seeing a trend where they want beyond a reasonable doubt before they're even writing warrants. And I'm like, that's not your job.
Not your job.
That's not your job. So they're getting, there's something slacking somewhere. I don't know if that's whether it's in the academy. And if you're becoming a detective, you've been a seasoned cop for a while. So at least where we're at, at least you've been a cop at least 4 years minimum.
Right.
So I want to know where that has to be coming from something. They got mixed messages or something somewhere, but it's 50.0001%. That's all we need to write a warrant.
Right.
Not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's for a conviction.
Right.
So have you seen detectives trying to do that?
I haven't really. I'll be honest, that was a really hard transition from prosecutor to judge. That was, besides the fact that I can't just dismiss a case I don't agree with anymore, losing that power, trying to retrain my brain into not beyond a reasonable doubt, because as a prosecutor, that's everything. That's the highest burden of proof.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even consider that.
Me trying to put that standard on paperwork from detectives, it was a learning experience. Thankfully, I had good judges to kind of help remind me, like, hey, we're not going beyond a reasonable doubt anymore. It's probable cause. Did this probably happen? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's a fairly low burden. And yeah, it's like 50, just a little over 50. So I don't really know where that would come from the detectives. I guess their thought process would be, if that's what you have to prove in court, you might as well prove it here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times, where I read a case and it is to me just reading it. Now, granted, I haven't seen the other side of the story, but okay, yeah, that's a pretty good case. I'd believe beyond a reasonable doubt that this happened, especially with video and confessions. Okay, all right, that's fine. It's not saying that there aren't cases that are beyond a reasonable doubt, but I think that gets kind of dangerous, because when you start talking about cases where it's like a family violence case. And so you have, a victim and a perpetrator of family violence, and one person says it happened, one person says it didn't. Okay, you're kind of at a standstill there. You're not going to get beyond a reasonable doubt, because you have two credible parties, to saying this happened, this didn't happen. But okay, one party has scratches on them, has, a little bit of blood behind the ear. Okay, that's starting to move that 50%, because right now, if both people are saying one happened, one didn't, okay, you're at 50-50. But if there's a little bit of evidence to say, okay, yeah, this person's slightly more credible because of the, there's a broken vase and that's what they said they hit them with, and there's things that are aside from the statements, it might not be beyond a reasonable doubt. But are you just going to not take a case because you think at this level that the DA's office has that level of proof, because they have time to investigate? Officers on the scene and detectives, they're not going into proving up the case. They're not going in and interviewing witnesses multiple times. And, they're there to make a kind of almost a snap judgment and just say, based off of what I see right this moment. So, that's why the DA's office has that higher burden, is because they have the time to research it and investigate it and present it that way. If you choose to hold yourself to that burden as a detective, you're going to miss out on a lot of cases that potentially could get to that level with just a little bit more investigation or research or testimony or whatever.
Yes. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Impact Tactical. Impact is a tactical outfitter for the men and women of our military, police, fire departments, and other public safety around the country. Impact's core beliefs is that fearless men and women protect our freedom and safety should have access to the best tactical performance apparel, equipment, and tools on the market. and they shouldn't have to go broke to get it. I've used Impact for about 11 years, and I can attest that they do live up to their core values. So you get a personal recommendation from me. You can find them at impacttactical.com. That's MPAK tactical.com. And be sure to tell them that 2 Cops, 1 Donut sent you. Specifically, the reason one case that we're dealing with right now is we've got a prolific burglar. And we've got several different pictures, some of varying qualities, but I'm looking and I'm like, that's the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I say 100%? No. But
could you say beyond a reasonable doubt?
yeah, like that's where I'm getting at with the arguments with some detectives is they're like, oh, I can't say 100% on the stand that that's the same guy. I'm like, I'm not asking you to. I'm like, to write a warrant, I don't need that. I just need 50.01%. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like, this is the same guy. And then, you got all these other factors looking at criminal case history of this guy and all that stuff. Like, he's got a history of burglary. He's prolific. He's in the area, same area that all these crimes are. Like, you got all this stuff, dude. Right. And then they got the pictures, and I'm like, I'm not asking you to say 100% that's the guy. I'm just saying that's enough to write a warrant for this dude, and let's figure the case out.
Right.
Let's go that way. And that's some of the pushback I've got. So just trying to get some clarification from a judge. It could be like, no, like, I've worked both sides of the house, as a prosecutor, obviously, yes, you got to get up there and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that's him. But me as a detective, I don't need to prove that. I just need to get enough to get in the game.
Right. Just need probable cause. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So moving on from that, case precedent.
Yes.
Okay. So
Fun.
I had a case and where a homicide suspect came from another state.
Okay.
The vehicle that they had a warrant out for this guy came into our area.
Okay.
We get it. Pursuit happens. SWAT call out. The whole 9 yards.
Okay.
Get him. Get the guy.
Awesome.
You would think it's our homicide suspect. It wasn't. It was a different dude.
Yeah.
But we need to search the car.
Right.
So we got the car on hold.
Okay.
And now we got to write a search warrant for this thing.
What are you looking for?
Anything related to the homicide from the other state. Now the state is reaching out to us to write a search warrant.
Right.
So I do. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's in our state. We got control, custody, care of this vehicle. Well, then the question becomes, whose jurisdiction over the vehicle and for what reason? And this was perplexing.
Oh, wow.
Judge Summers had to deal with this. And she was like, it bothered her for several days.
I believe it. It's a weird question because it's not the homicide suspect. So how did this guy get the vehicle?
But the vehicle was involved in the homicide.
How long was it from the homicide to the time of the search warrant?
Just a couple days. And then to further complicate things, the homicide suspect was caught in Dallas.
Okay.
Later.
Oh, okay.
Like a day or two later. But it's nuts.
It is.
So I'm not trying to get into the particulars of the case by any means, but what I want to know is, like, at your level, can you say, all right, there's no precedent set for this. You can either go, I'm not comfortable with it, I'm not going to do it, or you get to boss up and be like, I'm going to set precedent. Can you do that? I don't know. I don't know how that works for a judge. Can you be like, I'm going to set precedent right now?
You clearly don't spend a lot of time in the jail. You mean, do I apply Judge Houston's rule that you can try anything once? If there's no precedent, we can try it and see what happens.
Right.
Yeah, I've said that a lot at the jail. There's no precedent on file. I don't have any reason to say no. So, but no, each judge is their own individual entity to think of it.
Right.
I'm not bound to follow what Judge Summers does, nor is she bound to follow what I do.
But if there's case law to say.
If there is case law in my jurisdiction that is binding, that's what it's called, binding case law, yes, as a judge, I should follow that. But here's the thing, judges are lawyers, right? So most of the time, if you really wanted to, you could look at the case law and say, well, these facts differ from this case law in this way, and therefore I'm not going to follow it. No, I'm not saying I do that in any way, shape, or form, but that's how, case law becomes case law, is that people argue over the semantics of the case, and you can have different fact situations that have different outcomes because of that. In fact, there was Friday night, I had an evading. I think it was an evading charge. Yes, it was evading. Should have been a resisting. But it was really weird on the law. The law was kind of, evading requires a person to flee. This person didn't actually get anywhere. They were attempting to flee. And so, and they were, fighting, wrestling, whatever. It should have been a resisting. But I was talking to the jail sergeant about it, and I ended up just saying, listen, it's midnight. I'm going home. Here's the thing. Your officers say attempted to flee, attempted to flee, attempted to flee. And the statute says they have to flee. So based off of what the officers wrote, I don't think you have the evading. They said attempted. So I'm not taking this. I'm going to no PC it.
Yeah.
That was all fact specific. And Sergeant Ship was there and he laughed. He was like, okay, because it was completely based off of that fact pattern in that case. You bring me a different evading case and the words are a little bit different, I might find differently. But in that particular situation, I read that particular PC affidavit and went, the way they worded this, I'm going to go with no. I don't agree with it. But that doesn't mean I disagree with the circumstances completely, and that the next time I might not say, oh yeah, this is a good evading case. So it can be very fact specific when we're dealing with cases. And that can sometimes get you different precedent because you're like, well, yeah, this is what, the standing case law is, but this is how it's very different in this particular situation. And so I'm going to allow this one where most of the times I'd say no, or I'm not going to allow it, or most of the times I'd say yes.
So what's the process if you're like, you get a confusing case like that and you're like, all right, I need to see if there's any cases like this. How do you start looking up cases?
So the Texas Bar Association has something called Fast Case, where it's like Westlaw or LexisNexis, and you can go in and just start looking legal research, and I do that frequently. The other thing is I always pull a code. I always laugh. People think, oh, judges know everything. No. First thing you do if you come back to ask me a question, I pull the law just so I can look at it.
Thank you.
Because I might be wrong, or, there's a million laws and I don't remember each and every detail. So me pulling the book means, hey, I want to give you a good answer, not just what comes off the top of my head. So we have that. We have the TDCAA criminal law books. Those are really helpful because they have a little bit of case law in them. So I always start with, pull the law, see what the actual words are, like that evading, it says flee right in the statute. Okay, so if you're writing attempted to flee, to me that tells me you didn't meet that element. So pull the law, and then if I need to do more research, I do that, try to pull up the case law and everything. I weirdly, that case I was talking about where I had to sign something I didn't necessarily agree with, about 2 months after I signed it, I saw a Twitter article that was about that particular law. It was about the obscenity law here in Texas, and it was about like the history of that
offended.
law.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily being offended, but possessing certain items. And if you have certain items that you would find in one of those stores that's open to all night, is a limit for how many you can own that's not obscene.
Oh my God, I know what law you're talking about.
Yes.
That's still a thing. Somebody used it.
Somebody did use it, and I had to sign it. And then
that's amazing.
A month later on Twitter, I saw an article about that law and why it's no longer good law. And I went,
is it 7?
I think it's more than 5.
More than 5. Okay.
More than 5.
I couldn't remember the number. I remember learning that.
So yeah.
Laughing.
So I'm really hoping the DA's office is like, yeah, the judge was wrong on this. I was totally wrong on it. But I didn't know that because I didn't think to Google. I mean, I'm not going to Google obscenity in Texas. I should have, but I didn't. It's work computer. So,
man, you're really digging if you're pulling that one out.
But you know what? The way it was is it's still on the books. And so when I pulled up the case on that, I just didn't find the case. So I've learned to be like, you know what? I need to be more open about how I do my case research because there's a whole story. And to me, it didn't make sense. Like, how is this law on the books? But then we know those stores exist. So how are they not violating it? It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But also like on Twitter, they have the different courts have like updates, case law updates. And so I like following that. The state prosecutor's office has, case law updates. I learn a lot from that. We do legislative updates, every other year and try to keep on top of it.
That's something we need as detectives. Like I would like to have that because we've got things like catalytic converter thefts.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
That drives me insane.
Yes.
Because I've actually I ran a task force for that.
Right.
And
You actually brought me some of those warrants.
Yes, I
Not Judge Summers, me.
Yeah, I ran sent a legislative update idea to Brian Leach, I think his name is. He's a legislative writer, saying this is how you fix this law. We don't have the tools we need as officers to fight this. Because if I pull someone over, a burglary suspect or whatever, and I find through the investigation he's got 2 different credit cards that don't belong to him, that's an assumed felony. I've got him for that. Because it's having, maybe it's 3. 3. I'm sorry, 3. Yeah, you're right. 3 or more. So I get these different credit cards on him. Boom, I got the felony. Now all I got to do is follow through with my victims, make sure I actually have victims, and I'm golden. Cool. If I find you driving around in a Honda Civic and you got 15 catalytic converters stacked up in the back seat with a Sawzall, I have nothing. I mean, I can confiscate based on saying that I assume these are burglar stuff with other mitigating factors. But other than that, they can get them back if they want to follow through with the process because I don't have a victim. I have nothing. I've got nothing.
Right.
The laws don't work for us to do anything about that.
The catalytic converters are
yeah. You heard? Insane. Did you hear about the latest bust they had? $540 million.
Oh my goodness.
$540 million.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's a crazy issue.
Yeah.
Although I did just hear that apparently there's now something you can put on your car to protect it. No. Oh.
It's one of those gimmicks. I'm sorry. I tell everybody, they're like, what can I do to protect it? I've seen like U-Haul. They started not soldering, welding. They started welding cages around them.
Okay.
It doesn't stop them.
Right.
I've seen them. You'll see where the cage is, the catalytic converter is just gone from underneath the cage. Like it doesn't help.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to tell people, I'm like, there's not much you can do. You can slow them down a little bit, but it takes 30 seconds for a seasoned person to do it. And they make, $1,500 to $4,000. If they get a Prius is worth about $4,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't buy a Prius.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah. It takes about a minute for them. They'll jack it up and get it sawed off of there within a minute. So, but like an F-250, 30 seconds. Because they don't have to jack that up and then get right under it. 2 cuts, they're in and out. So, the reason I want to know about the precedent and stuff like that, I was just like curious. Like if you run across the case and you're like, okay, I can't find anything about this. Like happened to me, and Judge Summers, she goes, you know what? What are they going to do to me? It's what she said. What are they going to do to me? I'm going to go through this. So she's made a call. She's like, yeah, I'll issue a warrant and I'll let you guys go search it. And I said, I have a warrant as well. I made sure the other department from another state, they also wrote a warrant. The judge wasn't willing to, but then they heard our judge was willing to. So they met in the middle and they both had warrants. So we covered.
Okay. That's actually a really good way to handle it.
Both sides.
It
wasn't my idea, trust me.
Yeah, it's I think I love what judgment is. Okay, what are they going to do to me? It's you do have to have a certain amount of confidence and know that I'm making this decision. You have to use the best legal resources you have available to you. You have to follow the law to the best of your ability. But judges make mistakes too, and know that there are, that's what the appeals courts are for, and we could definitely, that warrant could get thrown out if she was really wrong, but you can't spend your entire time worrying, okay, well, what's the appellate judge going to say? Because then you get paralyzed to make a decision.
Right.
And it's hard enough making decisions as judges. So you look at the law, you read it, like I said, here in our city, everybody's a lawyer. So we've all been trained to read legal resources and make decisions based off of that. And as long as you're doing that with the best faith and doing the best that you can, I think it works out fine. I think I was a lot more nervous when I started as a judge because I was like, oh, if I make a bad decision, it is you kind of learn your own confidence. You learn, hey, I am skilled and I get paid for this job, not because I'm friendly, but because I know what I'm doing. My brain is legally trained to be able to read this and analyze this. And you have to both be able to say no based off of the law. And then you also have to be comfortable, telling somebody like you and Judge Summers are close, be like, sorry, you don't have it. Yeah. And you might be mad, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a lot happier that the judge did their job because that's going to make you better as an officer or as a detective than if a judge just rubber stamps and signs everything.
I was hoping she would say no because I was mad I had anything to do with the case because it really had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I was thrown under the bus as like, we need somebody to handle this and be a good liaison for this other state. And I was like,
see. So did you go in and be like, Judge, I completely understand if you don't want to sign
Yeah.
this? Because when people do that, I'm like, so you don't want this warrant. You're still going to have to swear to it, though.
Yeah.
So you're good with swearing to it?
Yeah.
I had one the other day where a detective was like, I won't have my feelings hurt if you don't sign it. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to put your name on it? Okay. And I read it and I said, listen, I get why you don't like it, but there is probable cause on each and every element. So I'm going to sign it.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I understand.
Yeah. For me, it was, I am giving a level of grace with good faith because it's cops that I don't work with.
Right.
So I was like, I don't think they're trying to screw me. Yes, I trust you guys. I believe everything you tell me and all that stuff. And I looked at the case. They sent me their file. I was like, okay, yeah, that's all good to me. However, we're in a weird realm.
Right.
I've never been here. So
really
I feel
interesting.
really weird writing a warrant for a case I had nothing to do with. And I had nothing to do with it even on our side of the house where our department's at. So I was like, this is really strange for me. And I feel like somebody's not wanting to do the work, so they're putting it on me.
Right.
And that was kind of how I looked at it at first. And then it's all about perspective.
Right.
My sergeant was like, well, think about it this way. Like, what if that was your homicide case and you needed it written in another state? I was like, yeah, that's what I just needed to hear it a different way.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, bet I'll write it. So I write it, put it up. And then judge was like, no, it's not a Tarrant County issue. And I'm like, it is, but it isn't.
But the vehicle's here.
Well, she was like, no, I'm not signing it. And then she calls me. It bothered her.
I love Judge Summers so much.
I get a call and she's like, hi, this is Judge Summers. I was like, oh, yes, Your Honor. What do you need? And she's like, I want to look at it again. I was like, oh, I thought it was done. Like, I didn't bring it up again. I was just like, sorry, Sarge. They told me I couldn't write. They got it right.
Right. She said no.
But no, she wanted to keep going. And she kept looking. She goes like, I need to take time. I goes, okay, Judge, it's not a big deal. And she's like, no, this is bothering me. And so she ran with it. And the process took about 2 or 3 days. But finally, we got to a point where she was comfortable with everything.
Right.
And she goes, send it. So we did.
Judge Summers is great about that she really does think about things and analyze them. And I think we all, to some extent, do that. You can't get bogged down in it. Once I've made a decision, it's time to move on. But in that case, when you're unsure, and it does take some time to really marinate and figure out like, hey, why did I say no? Maybe I need to, and I have zero doubt Judge Summers is great about talking to other judges. I'm sure she went and talked to a bunch of different people.
Yeah, that's what she said she was going to do. She had needed to consult.
Right.
And so that goes to say, for you as a judge, what are your checks and not necessarily checks and balances, but yes, checks and balances and your supervision? Like, where does that go? Because from my perspective, you're the top of the food chain. Like,
that's definitely on the top of the food chain. No,
so I know,
like
but I know,
here.
but I know you're not. So
no. So we have a deputy chief and a chief, and both of them are fantastic about call me, and that's really, if I could think of the only rule that we have from my chief, it's that just call.
And they're judges.
They are judges. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Judge Rogers, Judge Gonzalez. They are both very approachable, very happy to answer questions. I had one a few months ago. It was an indecent exposure, I believe, at a McDonald's up in far north area, and there were kids present. But the way it read, the elements were it wasn't quite all there. And I was like, I'm about to know PC something where a bunch of kids saw a guy naked at a McDonald's. Like, maybe I better call. So I called my deputy chief and I said, hey, walk me through this. Like, this is the story. And there were 5 kids, so they wanted to do 5 charges. And he and I both right off the bat were like, no, that's not when they get to count the victims. It's just one event.
It's not like a credit card swipe.
Exactly. So you only get one shot at it. And he's like, let's talk about the element of like the intent to arouse, because it really just wasn't there. But we talked through it, and hey, here's this, and did you think about it from this perspective? And got to the point where I was like, actually, I think you're right. I think that is there. I just was going off of some of the more obvious parts of that element, but he was like, you're not thinking about this, you're not thinking about this, you're not thinking about that. So we ended up coming to a place where I felt really comfortable signing off on it on the one. So 4 no, 1 yes, and explaining to the officer like, hey, it's not that there's no PC, it's that you can only charge them once for this crime. And they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. That's not a big deal. That's just a legal thing. But both of my bosses are like, just call, middle of the night. We also have an on-call phone for all the judges. So each full-time judge is assigned a week to answer the phone day or night, whatever whoever's working needs. So, if you can't come to work on your next shift because you're sick, the on-call judge deals with that, or you just need somebody to talk with. And that's invaluable, being able to pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, hey, walk me through this, or have you ever dealt with this situation? I also, my clerks hate it, but I use them as a sounding board, where if you're talking about something like what would reasonable people believe, or what would be the perception for, like if, would a reasonable person be afraid of a weapon at them? I have this legal mind and I can go through the legal elements, but sometimes I lose the reasonable person perspective. Sometimes I lose the, what does the rest of the world think? Because I'm so bogged down in this. So I will call, I'll ask my clerks like, hey, here's this. What do you think? And they're very honest with me and open to talking about cases, and they like to know what's going on anyway. Or, every once in a while, if I have it like you in the room and I'm dealing with something completely unrelated to you, I'll be like, hey, let me ask you your opinion on this, or, what would you do? You're a seasoned detective. This is a rookie. This is how I'm reading it. Am I missing anything? So I think whatever resource I can use, and, as far as checks and balances on me, my legal decision is my decision. And I don't think I'm ever going to be punished or reprimanded for my legal decision. Now, like I said, if I make the same bad legal decision over and over again, Judge Rogers might have a training opportunity with me, or, something. But, that's the power of being a judge, I guess, is that, as far as like making a decision on the legal merits, you are the final say so until an appellate court says otherwise. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't really have a whole lot of oversight in that perspective. Now, anytime we find no probable cause on something, we send it to the chief and the deputy chief so that they can see it. Because, if I know PC something of yours and you want to, argue with it, you can go to my chief and talk to him. Or what normally happens is, you'll go to your sergeant or whoever, and then they'll go to the chief, and it'll be like the higher ups all talking. And I prefer just come to me. Like if you have a question, just walk in the door and talk to me.
I know how I am. I would be like, what? No, help me understand. Like, what am I missing? And I will talk to the judge directly. However, the problem that you got to get around sometimes is the jail sergeant. Sometimes that is where I have made a reputation for pissing off jail sergents.
Well, there's an opening. So if you take the sergeant's exam, you ought to come down here and be a jail sergeant.
You are out of your mind. I cannot sit still.
You don't have to. You can walk him down the hallway and come argue with the judge all you want. That's a thing.
I am eligible for the sergeant's exam.
Ooh.
So as soon as that drops, trust me, I am going to be taking it. And,
cool. Good luck.
But no, you're not going to see me down at the jail. I don't want to deal with the smell. And it doesn't smell as good where that person sits as compared to you.
That's true. I work very hard. I have a Bath and Body Works addiction to make my area and the courtroom smell as pleasant as possible.
That is a good thing to have there. Mm-hmm. I would have the same.
It takes a special kind of person to be able to work in the jail day in, day out, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Even with the smells and the yelling and the drama, it's still.
I need to see the sun, smell the fresh air.
Yes.
And
it is a little bit like living in Las Vegas, like working there, because, there's no windows. I mean, at the very front, you might get to see a little bit of daylight through the Sally Port doors, but I don't. Back in my area, there's no windows. So the passage of time means nothing to me. So it's like a casino.
You know Joe Ship, right?
Uh-huh.
You know he's running
RTCC now?
Yes. Have you been yet?
I have not.
Okay.
He said he had to get settled in and then he's going to take me, but he did show me all the cameras on the computer. I think if the general public knew how many cameras were on, they would both be terrified and excited.
So that's part of one of the things that I do. I'm actually a part of the National Real-Time Crime Center Association.
Right. You were at that conference
Yes,
last
so I
week.
was at that conference, and I worked in the RTCC for the violent crime initiative that we had.
Yes.
So
The bane of my existence.
yes. So part of that that I took on myself was educating the public, because I knew we had an awesome power and I didn't want to lose it, and I didn't want us to abuse it. So I think hitting as many town hall meetings as you can, openly telling these people, like, if you want to come see it, come see it. I will I will give you a personal tour. I will walk you in. I will show you exactly what it is, to let you know that we're not violating. If you had the right to film with your phone out in public,
right,
that's what we're looking at. We're not looking into your home. We're not looking into your backyard. It's nothing like that. And if we are, we have a warrant to support it.
Right.
Because we know we have an awesome tool and we don't want to lose it.
Right.
So, making sure people understand that is huge.
Right.
What's your opinion on facial recognition? Because I think that is more of the hot button topic,
right,
than it is just having cameras.
Because that's not something that I, as a member of the public, can just have access to.
Right.
So I think you have, again, it's a tool that law enforcement has. It's not outrageous to think that we have that tool, but it has to be used very sparingly and with great discretion. Like the cameras, like you said, it's no different. The West 7th area of Fort Worth is no different, than what everybody else is out there with their cameras taking videos of. There's nothing that you shouldn't already expect in the society that we live in. Everybody has a camera. At any point in time, somebody could start filming, and that's absolutely fine in a public place.
Yeah.
And so with the cameras that the police have, I don't have an issue with it, because they are, from every camera that Sergeant Ship showed me, it was, areas that it's like, well, yeah, it's a totally public place. I just didn't realize how great the cameras were. They're a little bit better than my iPhone camera for sure, but they pick up a lot more details. But you could like see a sign 4 blocks away and read the sign. That was crazy. But again, that's something that the general public has access to. Same with drones. We all, could go out and buy a drone any day. But the facial recognition stuff that you need, I think that's more likely to be abused and to be a little bit scarier. So
yeah, I agree with you.
And I honestly, a lot of times people don't tell me that that's what they are using. So a lot of times it'll say resources available only to the police. And I'm like, no, I'm not taking that. Put in what it is.
Yeah.
Put in what it is.
Yeah.
Resources available to the police makes me eerie. Like, let's put in what it is. Tell me what you're using. And then I can make the decision whether I'm going to allow the warrant based on that or not.
Yeah.
But
I try to, it's like using, for me, the geo fence warrants.
Right.
When I finally learned how to do those, I looked at that. I'm like, I could use this on everything. I really could.
Right.
Because everybody has some sort of Google account on their phone. However, I don't want to abuse it. And I only want to use it on cases that I find significant. So we had like a local cable company had like $400,000 worth of copper wiring and stuff stolen from their place. I'm like, that's a significant amount. I just learned about these warrants. Let me cut my teeth on this one and see if it flies. So I did it. It worked. I ended up finding the 3 individuals that were responsible for it. Was over the period of like 3 nights. They just repeatedly hit this facility.
Right.
But I'm like, that's a high dollar amount. And that, how do you tell a victim that, well, sorry, I can't do anything, even though I have this valuable tool.
Right.
And it goes again with the face recognition stuff. Like, would I have used facial recognition for that case? No, because I find it to be a more awesome power.
Right.
And I think only the like violent crimes, something where there's somebody.
Right. Where the danger to the public so far exceeds.
Yes.
And that's when you're dealing with 4th Amendment search and seizure rights. You do have to balance all of that.
Yes.
Take all that into consideration.
And I think that's huge. But I'm on that same wavelength with you as far as facial recognition goes. It makes me nervous, but it's such a cool
It is.
feature, you know what
Someday
I mean?
when I'm not a judge anymore, I want to see it in action.
Right. Yeah. And the way that where I'm at works is like we can't just use it.
Right. Right.
We have to actually request, and it's through a civilian that's not a cop. So that's also a good checks and
Right.
balances.
Yeah.
Because I like having cool tools, but at the same time, I don't want to lose them.
Well, and that's something that, who knows, that might become available to the public, where
Yeah.
someday it might be something where you can take a picture in the crowd and it'll tag everybody's social media, which is terrifying, but
Yeah.
that's the way things go. And then when
Uh-huh.
it does become generally available to the public, then the invasion into your privacy, that part of it goes down.
Yeah. It's got to be close because freaking Facebook knows when I'm thinking about Nikes or
Right.
whatever.
You haven't said a single thing about it, and yet it's like, oh, hey, you might be
Yeah.
interested in this. But how did you know? I
Yeah.
haven't said anything. I've literally just thought about it and it read my mind.
It's that new telekinetic app they have.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I know, right?
So scary.
So I think I've hit most of the things that I've been very concerned about as
Okay.
far as judges and stuff. We've talked about the oh no, I didn't. There's one I did miss, the no bonds and the bonds and stuff like that.
Okay.
Let's jump on that. Do you have to use the restroom or anything?
Yeah, let's take a quick break.
Okay, we'll take a break because I have to use the restroom.
Okay.
So I had to take a short little bathroom break.
Yeah.
Because we're drinking these fabulous beers.
Yeah, this one was good.
Yeah, I was.
I'm glad they recommended
I
it.
see why it won awards. It was very good. Question is, we probably got time for one more bottle. Which one are we gonna have?
You pick. It's your choice. So you've got the Hazy Daisy, which is probably a pretty hoppy IPA, and then the stout, the pumpkin stout.
Which what do you? I know which one I'm leaning towards.
Go for it. They're equal to me. So
it's cold out. It's stout weather.
It is cold. You did say it was stout weather.
Yeah.
So just a little stout though.
And I am a big pumpkin fan. So let's show.
And I
this
just
guy
like the
out.
name of it, Jack's Wandering Soul. It just sounded
Oh,
cool.
that is cool. I like the artwork. I always get in the artwork. If you're anybody into craft brewing, that's kind of one of the things with this is just the small business feel. I don't know how to explain it really. 10.9%. Bottle number 18. Oh, they labeled the bottle number.
I did not notice that, but okay.
Yeah. Got the wax rim. Let me see if I can get into this guy. Oh, we almost got it.
So like I said, this is a local place. It's a great place to hang out. They do events on the weekend. They'll do some vendor things, and they had a great Oktoberfest, but I was out of town for it. So I just like it. I'll go on a Sunday night and just read a book.
I love stouts. I'm a big stout person.
I'm just going to have a little bit.
I'll let you pour.
I do have to drive home
You
today.
do have to drive, yeah. Oh, look at the color and the pour. That is a good stout.
It looks like pumpkin.
Yep.
Like the top. You can see it.
That's a good beer.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is a good beer.
That actually is quite tasty.
That is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
There we go.
Yep.
Jack's Wandering Soul.
I like it. Yeah, that's good stuff. I'm a pumpkin junkie. Like,
do you do the pumpkin spice lattes?
Oh, girl, please.
Love it.
Always. Love it. I'm big into, so I like Black Rifle coffee.
I do too.
I got a subscription. They have a pumpkin beer.
Oh, do you?
I'm sorry.
I was like, pumpkin beer. When did they start brewing?
I'm sorry, pumpkin coffee.
Okay.
Love that. And then if you go to their actual like stores, they have a nitro cold brew pumpkin coffee.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've never been into the cold brews. I'm trying to be, but to me, coffee just needs to be hot.
Yeah.
I just like hot coffee.
I get it. But when you're outdoors as a cop and wearing all that crap,
right?
If I can drink something cold in Texas during the hot weather, I'm going to.
Which is, 90% of the time.
90% of the time, yes. And I work days now, so, 6 to 4 p.m. and it's hot.
Always.
So
at least till you become a jail sergeant and come work 4 to midnight
with me. Here. Okay, that is an appealing part to being a jail sergeant, would be doing that and getting to understand cases better, because that's a whole different perspective.
Well, and it's important to have really great officers, sergeants that know what the law is and that really have a mentorship feeling, because it's funny, you can see like clockwork when we get a new academy class and the rookies that come in, like the number of no PCs going up like this.
Yeah.
And so sergeantship is fantastic at it. He was great at,
Yes.
opening up the
yes.
book. Jackson is constantly running down to my office. Judge, let me ask you this.
Yep.
So, I have a great working relationship with them. It didn't start off that way, with anytime you work with police officers, you have to prove yourself. And you have to, sometimes, go to fight. We would have our moments, but
Right.
now I feel like, we can talk respectfully towards each other and understand, the roles that we play are very different. And I really respect all the jail sergeants because they do take the time to mentor people. They don't just blindly sign off on things. They say, hey, this is where I have a problem.
Yeah.
Like Sergeant Dennon the other night was just like brand new rookie. He was so cute. He was so excited to be there. And of course, what's unfortunate is, I do have a working relationship with them. So I'm not just sitting back in my hidey hole in the back. I'm walking up and down the hallways and, go in, say hi. We visit, and I was in there, and he's tearing apart this rookie, and he's like, "Don't listen to me, listen to the judge." And the rookie's like, "Oh crap, I just got torn apart in front of the judge." And I said, "I agree with everything you said, Sarge. Like, you got it."
Yeah.
So it's nice to have people. So sergeantship went to RTCC, and then, we're gonna have some other openings. So I'm interested to see. I've just had the same team in the 4 years I've been a judge there. And so I'm interested to see who we get and how having new sergeants is going to be, how it's going to affect my job, how it's going to affect theirs.
Yep.
I'm kind of excited, but also nervous because I've been spoiled rotten with my jail sergeants.
It's good money. It definitely, because you got a lot of overtime opportunities and things of that nature. It is very much a teaching job.
Very much.
That I think goes on the police side of the house. This has nothing to do with you, but it doesn't get, that's not as big of a factor in getting that position.
Right.
Which is a disservice. I think if we could improve anywhere, because I have run into jail sergeant issues where I've got it. I know I have it. And I've just got somebody that's got either a pissy attitude or the inability to see beyond their own perspective and go to the judge. Where me, I'm like, okay, you think I don't have it. I think I do. My sergeant thinks I do because he's already signed off on it. We were at a 2-tier system at that time.
Right.
So basically you're telling me and my sergeant, who didn't just sign it blindly, that does happen.
It does.
I don't want to say it doesn't.
Does.
But as a seasoned cop too, when you have a weird case and you'll tell your sarge, hey Sarge, this is an odd one. I need you to really look at this. And you do that. And so when you get to the jail sergeant, I will do the same thing. Hey, this is a weird one. Here's everything. That's not just my affidavit. Here's where I got this from. And you walk them through it. And then they'll tell you no. And I'm like, let's ask the judge. And it's like, no, we don't need to take it. That's where I start getting into the problems. Is this ego issue versus perspective issue.
But let me put a different perspective on it.
Okay.
They also know which judge is working and their attitudes towards that. There are judges who aren't going to answer your questions.
Right.
So you walk down the hallway and they're not going to talk to you. Okay, fine. I sincerely doubt a single jail sergeant we have would be like, no, you can't go talk to Judge Houston. Half the time they're like, go ahead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, the ones that are there now, that's not, I'm talking in the past.
Right.
So,
but they're the ones that know that. And they know on the weekends, if a part-time judge that they're like, it's not going to get you anywhere. Just, this is where it is. Now, could they do a better job of explaining that? Absolutely. But it is, and to me, I look at them as my gatekeepers. The better they are at their job, the less paperwork I have to do as an OPC. Because I think very rarely there have definitely been times, but for the most part, when I find that there's no probable cause on an affidavit, it's not that there was no probable cause. It's that the way it was written,
it wasn't articulated properly.
Exactly.
Yes.
It didn't rise to the level of probable cause, but there's a good chance that out there, a detective who could look at it. And I think for me, one of the things that's most frustrating is with the sergeants and the detectives that I'll get phone calls like, well, why'd you do this? Well, the report says this. Okay, well, I don't see the report. I literally only see the affidavit. So if you take the affidavit plus some other paperwork down to the jail sergeant, that means nothing to me. I only can review what's in that affidavit. It's called the Four Corners Rule. I can only look at the four corners of that affidavit. I can't just imagine things,
Right.
Oh, I think this happens. One of the things that drives me crazy is when it says something like pulled over for a traffic stop. Okay, well, how do I know that that traffic stop is valid? No, put the reasons in there. Put over what the traffic stop was. Also, bear in mind, traffic judge, so it better be right.
Yes.
And, I think the jail sergeants, they have to learn which judge is there, what their preferences are. It's hard. And then dealing with rookies and then dealing with people who think they know everything.
Yep.
Officers are confident. They're supposed to be.
Yep.
It's kind of a nature of the job, but also they're dealing with that personality type as well. And it's a hard job. I respect what the jail sergeants do.
So I got into it one time.
It's shocking.
I know. And I want to preface. Okay, first let me educate people on the process. I arrest somebody. I have to take them to the jail.
A warrantless arrest.
A warrantless arrest, on view offense, whatever it is. I arrest them. I'm gonna say dope because this was a traffic stop that turned into dope. So
as it happens.
So we'll go down that path. But you arrest them, you take them down to the jail, and then you have to write out an affidavit that goes before the judge that says this is the probable cause of why this person needs to be under arrest. And that affidavit, before it ever makes it to the judge, first it goes to your sergeant, your direct supervisor. This is the checks and balances. You send it to him, and he pokes any holes through it that he can see.
He or she.
I'm sorry. And he'll say that it's yes, you've got all the elements from what I can see. Good arrest. Cool. Then you take it to the next checks and balances, which is the jail sergeant, who is more seasoned because he sees so much more every single day. He's not just getting affidavits from his troops. He's getting affidavits from everybody in the city.
Right.
And he's reading through, and he's making sure all the elements for the offense are satisfied. And then it goes to the judge, and then the judge goes yes or no. Like, you need more, bud.
Right.
Too bad, so sad. Son.
Right.
So if they say you've got PC, good. The arrest stands. If they say no PC, like she was referring to earlier, like I know PC'd your case, it means you didn't have enough, and you got to go cut that guy loose,
right.
or reword your affidavit and get a redo and send it back again.
Yeah, I don't really like saying redo. If I found there's no probable cause, that's the end of it. Now, that being said, if for example, I had one, this is the old UCW laws, but it was at I want to say it was probably Beezy's off of West.
Yep.
Everything comes from Beezy's, and it was a UCW, and the premise was because it was a location that sold alcoholic beverages. A certain percentage of their business sold it for off-premises consumption, and the officer started writing that sentence about Beezy's being a food mart that sells beverages for off-premises location, but forgot to finish the sentence. So I knew what the officer was trying to say. Everything else in there was fine, but literally it was one of those things where you could tell he was typing it and somebody distracted him, and then he went on to the next sentence.
Yeah.
So technically, that's an OPC. You failed to establish that element. Bye. But that doesn't do anybody any good, where I can see, hey, you just typed something wrong. So, okay, fine. I know PC it. I order the defendant released. Well, the defendant's thinking, okay, cool, I'm done with this. But the detective's going to follow right up behind him and be like, no, I have all the elements. It's there. So if it's a clerical error or a mistake like that, I'll occasionally go talk to the jail sergeant and say, hey, can you review this? I don't tell them what's missing, but hey, can you review this? You're missing some elements. I think it's just clerical issue. And they always can look at it and be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we missed that. Okay, fine. But if it's an actual no PC, they didn't have probable cause. You stop somebody for failing to signal exiting a private drive. That's not against the law. So there's no conversation about it. I'm not going to even tell you what you did wrong. This is it.
You're right.
You're done. No PC. Good luck to you, sir.
Yes. I guess yes, you're right. I should have.
Once we found no PC, it's done.
Yeah.
But if it's a clerical thing, then there may be times, depending on the circumstances and how bad it is, it's like, hey, I know you meant to put this in here.
Yeah.
Obviously something happened. And it's funny because, a lot of times the jail surgeon's like, I can't believe I missed that. Or even when you bring a warrant, I've had so many people read this. You're the first one that caught that.
Yep.
But it's just a different perspective of the way that the judges read it versus the way you do it.
We get complacent.
Yeah.
It happens. I know, I have a template for warrants. And one time, I'm copy and pasting all my stuff in there, that I normally copy and paste. And I left from the old warrant, I left the body weight, race, all wrong.
Yep.
From the old one.
Yep.
and totally didn't catch it.
Yep.
Nobody caught it.
Right.
And it made it
Happens.
all the way through. And the judge is like, "You guys white?" Because it says here like 18 times black male. I'm like, "No, it's a black male." And they're like, you got a problem.
Right.
You may want to go fix it. And
see, that's the benefit of the in-person ones, because when I find those mistakes, I hand you white out and say, "Would you like to fix this now?" And you can just white it out and handwrite it. The virtual ones, okay, hey, it's Judge Houston calling.
Send it back.
Did you mean to say this? Or at least I can screenshot it and be like, read this if this is what you really meant to say. Oh no, or the dates are wrong or whatever. It happens.
Yeah. So I specifically, I'll bring up this one case issue that I had. Pull a guy over, traffic stop. We're set up on a dope house.
Okay.
This is us as patrol.
Okay.
And I'm actually teaching another guy how to kind of dope hunt, so to speak. So that's what we call it.
All right, good to know.
Yeah. So we're set up on a known drug house, and I'm like, all right, this is the patterns. They show up, a car will show up. If they're gone within 5 minutes, they just bought and they left. I was like, so what you'll do is you'll follow them, you'll leave, you wait for them to commit a traffic offense, knock them down, and then you start learning your skills to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving him this demonstration, and we pull this car over, and I'm going through the questioning that I know to go through, and I'm letting him practice and pull this guy over and ask the guy, "Hey, you got anything in your pockets that I need to be worried about?" And the guy's like, "No, you mind if I check?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, go ahead." Of course, he says yes. So pulls out this.
The defense attorney in me is cringing.
Yeah, he pulls out this crack rock.
Okay.
Now, my buddy says, "What is that?" And the guy's like, it's mine. And he owns these.
Right.
He's owning up to everything.
Right.
And he's like, "That looks like," and he says it, "crack cocaine." Me, I would have been like, "It looks like a rock, man." Like, and he's like, "It looks like crack cocaine." And he's like, "Yeah, that's mine." He's like, "I got a habit," or he said something to that effect. Well, now he's got the crack on the trunk.
Okay.
And the guy, he's searching him over the trunk. And hey, you already know.
Oh gosh. Okay.
And the guy just goes for it and just tries to like chomp it. And as he's trying to chomp it, he spits it into the grass for never to be found again. The body cams were new. We just got the body cams.
I love body cam.
Yeah. So we had the body cameras, and I've got this guy on camera admitting that it is crack cocaine and that it was his, and that we were at it. And so I got all this stuff, and I'm like, let's go.
A reasonable person believes he's detained. So he then tried to hide the evidence. So you got a tampering.
So yeah, I got tampering, and I charged him with the crack cocaine, even though I couldn't prove that it was crack cocaine.
But how'd you know what the weight was?
I didn't. I didn't know. I went based on training and experience. It was about this size, and I approximated, which I knew it was under a certain amount.
Okay.
For certain. But I went down that path, and the jail sergeant wouldn't PC any of it.
Oh, I would have definitely taken the tampering.
Okay.
Well, I say that, assuming it was written properly.
Yes.
Tampering sounds good.
So I was like,
the possession, I can see why.
So we get into this argument.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have it on camera. Like, this is different. This is, we're figuring the grounds out because it was so new. And I was like, I've got it on camera. This is different. This isn't just somebody saying something and they could say, well, that wasn't me talking. Everything is there.
Right.
Got it all. I even had the investigation, us watching the house and them going in, leaving. So I got all that. And I just wanted the judge to see it because it was so different.
Right.
And they were telling me no to all of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ask the judge. And they told me, no, I wasn't. And that's where the problem.
Oh.
That's where the problem came in.
But again, I say, it depends on who the judge is. They protect I don't want to say protect the judges, but they protect our privacy. And I don't want officers coming down. So as a judge, I can't give you an advisory opinion. Me telling you like, I would have definitely taken that. That's more joking. Like, I can't tell you what I'm going to take. I can't tell you like, yes, I'll accept this. We can talk about hypothetical situations and we can talk, after the fact, like this is a situation. But as far as like you walking down and being like, are you going to take a tampering and a possession charge on this? I can't tell you that.
Right.
That's inappropriate.
I just wanted your eyes on it to say, what do you think? I needed to learn. This was a learning moment for me, and you cut that process off. And so I did. I went around, and it pissed them off because they didn't know I did. I backdoored it,
Yeah.
and
Happens.
and the judge accepted it,
Right.
and I was like, okay, like
I don't know that I would have taken the possession
They
if
didn't.
you. Okay, I
Did
was
not.
like, the possession
No,
would
they
be
had
really hard.
no, they had me
'cause-
rewrite.
Okay.
But
The
definitely,
tampering, yes.
definitely went with the tampering. Which
Sound based off of everything you told me, hypothetically, I'd take the tampering.
yes. So now this was years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't a detective by any means, but looking back on that moment, that was a part of the system that I started to realize like this needs to be addressed. This needs to be. You need to be down there with the mindset of an educator. And if you're down there with the mindset of the educator, I would have looked at that case and goes, you know what, this is weird. I have not.
Right.
Let's go find out together. Let's both learn on this. Let's have the judge come in. That's
Right.
That's how I would have handled that. Not, nah, you ain't got it.
Right.
Come on. You can't look at this and say with a, just being objective and say that this isn't kind of odd. This is weird.
Well, the benefit though is in a situation where you have, even if the jail sergeant says no, or if the judge at the jail says no, the result is if you as an officer firmly feel like, hey, this is case, suspect case it, send it to a detective, and a detective can get a warrant for it. So
True.
It doesn't necessarily just kill the case completely.
Yeah. But at that level as an officer, you're not thinking that
You don't
way.
think, yeah.
You're thinking like, well, if this doesn't, that's done.
Right.
Because and let's face it, the subculture of it is, if the judge doesn't do it and the detective finds out,
right,
he may be more prone to just, well, the judge didn't find that.
Right.
Is he going to push it?
Right.
So
it depends on the detective.
depends
I know a few that would probably be like, heck yeah, I'm going to take this.
Yeah, I know.
I see you. I know you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. I appreciate the jail sergeants because if every officer had a question, came down to talk to me, I'd never get any other work done.
True.
Definitely. I personally have a very open door policy that come down, we can talk, maintain open lines of communication.
Yeah.
Especially if I know PC is something and you think I'm an idiot and want to tell me that, come do it respectfully. But, I've been wrong on things before. I'll be the first to admit everybody makes mistakes. And if you think you don't, then you kind of have a problem. But
yeah, but that's part of the culture in policing that isn't readily and I don't even know if it's readily available in other places because yes, where we at, we kind of foster it.
We have a great system.
Yes.
24 hours a day, you have a judge in a courtroom that you can talk to. I know some other cities, I don't just sign warrants for our city. I sign them for Tarrant County Sheriff's Office, TFW Airport Police. I sign warrants for all over Tarrant County. Actually, Tarrant County, Tarrant, Johnson, Denton, Wise, and Parker. Anywhere that the city of Fort Worth is,
Really?
I'm eligible to sign warrants for. So
Really?
Mhm.
I didn't know that. I thought you were only allowed to operate within the county that you.
Nope.
play
It's
in.
wherever our city is, I get to sign warrants, and I'm a magistrate for every single one of those counties.
That's cool.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I judge you don't get this perspective because you're not a police officer, but judges are scary. Like not scary like,
I suppose.
But
No, they
it-
are scary.
but it's one of those things like we know, like you don't cross the judge, you don't
Right.
piss the judge off.
Right.
You it's just that's the culture from a
Right.
cop's perspective.
That's a good thing.
And so, well, that is how looking at like kind of what I just explained that I did. My heart was in the right place.
Right.
I was trying to legitimately learn. And two, I thought, not that I thought I was right. It's just, I didn't know. And you're not giving me an explanation of how I'm wrong.
Right.
You're just saying, no, you don't got it.
Right.
And I don't agree with you. I don't see that. So I needed more. So that is hard for cops to do.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's hard for them to do. And for you to say, yeah, I got open door policy. Like, I think it would help if judges, have you ever been a part of a academy class? Have you ever went and talked to an academy class?
No.
Now, is there a stigma against that?
I think, I've always wanted to go on a ride along, but my chief said no. Because I would like to see a little bit different perspective, but there is a boundary too. There does have to be, I don't want to say a fear. I don't like that, but there has to be a healthy respect for the differences. Yes, you and I we work in criminal justice together and we have the same kind of goals for making things through. But like I said, I'm the ref. Like I'm just calling the game. So my job isn't to help you write your affidavit, your warrant.
No, by no means. I get that.
And so you do have to be really careful about making sure you draw those lines and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I love officers coming in and saying like, hey, just stopping in, saying hi, hey, what's going on out there? How's it going? I like to say, I think I basically I treat officers the same way I treat the defendants that I talk to. Hey, this is why you're here tonight, or I'm going to answer questions about the process for defendants. I'll answer questions about the process for officers too. It's, you can't be too familiar, we're not going to be besties, but, there is, I think, a benefit to having an open communication so that you learn how to do your job better based off of what the judges are looking at. I think that's the thing, about knowing that the judge is only reading the affidavit. Well, a lot of people just don't know that, particularly sergeants don't know that. Or, if I have a sergeant call, hey, you've no PC'd this officer's PC affidavits, you've no PC'd, there was one that was like 4 or 5 of them. What do you have against my officer? Literally nothing. Like, I don't care at all. It's just, we talked through it. And he said, well, I read the report. As soon as people say that, or when a detective calls and it's like, hey, PC'd this, but I can't figure out why. And I'll say, well, did you read the jail affidavit? Well, no. Okay, read the affidavit.
Yeah.
That's all I see. Just that kind of educating, like people don't know that.
Right.
And so for me to educate people, that makes my job easier. Like, oh, okay, now I know that the judge is only going to see this. I'm not going to spend so much time worrying about what's in my report. I'm going to worry about what's in the affidavit to get me through tonight. And then I can supplement the report later or whatever it ends up being. And so that's why I think I benefit from that open door policy too, or when I hear things like, hey, somebody's mad at you because of this. Or, a couple weeks ago, we had an incident where they were doing a violent crime initiative, and the law on marked crosswalks is interesting. So you have to, in order to require somebody to cross at a marked crosswalk, there has to be basically a crosswalk and a light available at each end of the block. So think, downtown where there's a multitude of crosswalks every block. Well, yeah, that makes sense to require that. But if you're talking about walking down, a different street, Camp Bowie, or, out front of your house or whatever, it makes no sense to require you to cross in a marked crosswalk. They're not readily available. Well, they were stopping people for crossing not in a marked crosswalk somewhere way outside of downtown that there wasn't one.
Yeah.
So the first one I no PC'd, I'm like, y'all, that's not the law. Sorry.
Yeah.
Took the law to the jail sergeant, whatever. Well, day 2, they're doing this initiative and they just start doing it again at the beginning of my shift. I'm like, this isn't the law.
Stop.
Just stop. You're making my job harder. And I don't, that's a lot of paperwork to fill out. Like you're wasting these people's time, stopping them when you shouldn't be, and then arresting them, bringing them to jail. And guess what? When I no PC it, you have to get them out of here. So good luck with that. Whatever you're finding on them isn't going to fly. So, being able to have a relationship, I took that one to the jail sergeants and said, here's the law. Take a look.
Yeah.
Here's the affidavit. Take a look.
Get the message out to these guys.
Exactly. Without me telling them what to do. But,
Right.
it helps that I have that. And then, after we get through all that, one of the officers who'd been no PC like 3 times came in and was like, okay, let me make sure I'm understanding the law correctly. This is how I read it. This is what you're saying. Had a perfect understanding after the fact.
Yep.
But now we know the next time that happens, they're familiar with the law. They understand how it works, and they're going to be better officers because of it.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's pushed from a public push, like, oh, these people just run across the road. And
there were some reasons behind this, this initiative.
The complaint comes in and you're just like, all right, well, here's the laws that we have. Well, if they're crossing where crosswalk, not provided, we got them.
Right.
So I understand that. As a downtown bike officer for a while, it was definitely something that we used as a tool for problem people. But this is a good education portion while we're on the topic, affidavit versus report.
Yes.
So what most people don't understand is when we talked about probable cause, I arrest you, I've got to show the judge that I have probable cause. I fill out this quick thing that's called an affidavit.
I hope it's quick.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not.
Yeah, sometimes it's not. Sometimes mine are like 3 pages long because I'm working off of obscure laws, so I need to really articulate.
No, you do not have to tell the judge the law. You have to articulate it, but you do not have to put the law in your affidavit for me. I promise I'm a grown-up. I can look it up myself.
It usually isn't for you. It's for the jail sergeant.
I get that, but it's so offensive when it's like a minor law. Like if you put the, assault statute in there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What?
Again, we all
Yeah.
have law degrees. Don't
Yeah.
worry about adding that one in there.
But unless you're dealing with catalytic converters and you're talking
Oh,
about
yes. Then please put the law in.
Yeah.
Yes. Catalytic converters are the worst.
Yes. But the affidavit is like a dumbed down version of the report. So I'm trying to help civilians
I don't
understand.
know if I'd say dumb down. It's the affidavit. The only thing you need to worry about is what are the elements and what information to prove those elements.
Correct.
So you don't have to go through the entire story. It was dark and stormy night. We don't need
Yeah.
to start that way. But you do have to establish where it happened, the jurisdiction for the city or county that it happened in, the identity, who did it, and then what happened and how was this a violation of the law. So in theory, it should just be the very basic story of your case. This is the cocktail party version of it, of
Yeah.
your story. It doesn't need to be trial ready. I have to remember all of these details.
Right. So when she was talking about like a sergeant read the report and all the elements are there, that's because all the elements were probably spelled out in the report. This big, versus the affidavit, which is just this, and it does happen.
It does.
We miss the important parts sometimes, trying to, and this is another cultural issue. We are trying to not burden the jail sergeant and the judge as best we can, because what's the reaction we get when we have a 4-page affidavit?
Oh, I roll my eyes.
Yeah,
I do.
And
anytime it's manufactured delivery of a controlled substance and there's like 400 different types of drugs and they're like different weights and different things,
right,
my clerks just watch me go,
yeah,
okay.
And so we're conditioned as cops. We see that and we're like, oh God, I don't want to make the judgment, don't want to make the jail sergeant mad. So you see their face, and Sergeant Ross is.
I love Ross.
God, he's one of those, and him and I have a great relationship, but he's very much wears his emotion on his sleeve. And when Levine walks in with a catalytic converter case that is got obscure laws, and we're talking about, we're not talking about the normal stuff, and I got to walk him through it. And it's 4 pages long, and he's like, "What the fuck, Levine?" And I know, I'm sorry.
I know.
Just bear with me.
You have to
Read it. I promise it'll make sense. I will explain it as we go. So, that is the difference between an affidavit and a report. The report is the whole picture, and it could be multiple. A report could be the initial officer, and then the detective's supplement, and another officer's supplement.
More than one report.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a judge, you tell me how you feel about this. I am a supplement the world type of guy.
I think that's great.
I think
I'm not going to read it, so go for it.
But you were a prior prosecutor at one time, and I try to tell people, I'm like, why are you so... Officers, quit taking on so much burden. If there were 4 officers out there and they all did a bunch of different stuff, don't get a quick synopsis of what they did. Say, go do a supplement.
Right.
It may piss them off. Well, don't jump on the call.
Right.
Sorry. This is just part of it. I want a supplement. I want from your words exactly what went out. Now, that's me as a detective. Me as an officer, I didn't have that perspective. I wish I had. I wish I would have made more people do supplements at that level.
Right.
Because it's their words. It's exactly what happened, exactly what they did. Not me trying to remember and writing down on a little piece of paper like, Jones showed up and he stood over at the corner block, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And then I watch his body cam footage as a detective, and I'm like, not only did you stand there, you talked to like 4 different people that showed up and was like, oh, yeah, Big Willie's had a problem with this block for years. He's always been talking about shooting it. I'm like, dude.
Put it in a supplement.
I mean, that would have been nice.
The more documentation, the easier it is to remember at trial. And then the DAs, when they're getting ready to pull their witness list, they know, hey, this is the person we need to have on the stand. This is how we prove our case.
Yep.
And it might be years. I mean, we went during COVID, we went, years without having any trials. So you start coming back to trial, it might be a year, 2, 3 years down the road. All those supplements, all that documentation is just going to help strengthen the case later on. So I'm a big fan of that. I've been on this kick for a while. Nobody listens to me, so I guess I'll use this opportunity. But one of the things I don't understand about our department is, and I'm starting, a few people have been talking to me about it a little bit, but if you have an officer, whether patrol or I think I see this a lot with directed response, if they are the ones, like for an evading case, you run from DRU. they're the experts. There is nothing a detective is going to be able to do that is going to have more knowledge than the person that was, part of the evading. So why are those officers not the ones coming in and getting their warrants signed? Because detectives are overrun. I mean, very high caseloads. I see that. I know, I've had, especially one of the things with the virtual stuff is that we do warrants all time of the night. I have seen detectives from their homes, after the kids go to sleep, like, hey, I need to get a few warrants signed because I have time right now. So detectives are overrun. And then you add to that, if you were the one that was chasing a car and you saw the evading, better than anybody. So why have a detective have to write something up? Why not just have the officer that was driving that got evaded from? Why not have them come in and get the warrant?
Well, then you get into it's a elevated paid position to be a detective.
Right.
At very few levels in the police officer world, at that level, are you trained or expected to write warrants. I'm with you. I'm not against that. I understand what you're saying. So I'm giving you the culture of it.
That was one thing that I heard this week from a new DRU detective or corporal that said, well, that's part of it. But here's my thought on that. Okay, so the detectives get assigned cases. This is not you getting assigned a case. I feel like this is more you finishing a case that you came along. And I can see why maybe we don't want the rookies to do it, but for a directed response, that's an elite position.
Yes.
And they're likely going to promote eventually. Mm-hmm. So why not start that warrant writing process now, not assigning them. So they're not getting, assignments at them. So you don't have to pay them more.
But it's an accepted. I'm with you. This is part of my argument about, and they're going to hear me calling a little bit of shade.
Go for it.
You are in a specialized unit. If you have it, they have an assigned corporal.
Right.
Even at the bare minimum, if you don't take the time to write it as the officer who encountered this, then that corporal should.
Right.
Because he's a part of the unit, and that's just what you get into.
Right.
And they don't.
I will say this week, I actually had two come in, which was really funny. So Detective Chavez just went to one of the directed response teams.
Just became a sergeant. Or I'm sorry, detective.
Corporal.
Yeah.
I don't understand the police thing. Whatever.
It's the same rank. Corporal's in the field. Detective just sits behind a desk.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Corporal Chavez came in and I gave him my rant because I literally have been talking about this forever, but I gave him my rant. And then later in the afternoon, another corporal came in and brought his one of the directed response officers. And I said, oh, please tell me you brought me a warrant for an evading. And we were talking about it. I said, honestly, evading and possession cases, no reason why that team couldn't write their own. And he's like, well, on that note, we have an evading and a possession case for you. And I was like, this is awesome because to me, it solves a lot of issues and it gives people a training opportunity. I get the fact that it is a different pay raise. And I guess, you don't want it to be overdone. You don't want to assign, okay, DRU, you need to write this warrant for this patrol officer that had this issue. No, I'm just saying if you yourself experienced it and you're on one of those teams, so gang,
yes,
CTU,
any specialized unit,
and you yourself are the expert, you are the one that experienced it, I want to see warrants from them because I find them to be more credible than, you relating what they said to you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on those units, okay, so me and property crimes. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I changed when I got there was my team, it's me and all these officers, and we are running off of leads from other property crimes detectives.
Right.
So let's say we find their guy and he's got a warrant. That detective wrote a warrant for this guy and we get him pulled over. We get them and we're arresting him, but in the car is a bunch of new stolen stuff.
Right.
It's not fair for that detective to write a warrant.
Right.
Based on, we're right there.
You're right there. You can see it.
I'm a detective / corporal. I'm in the field. But that's I'm the one that can file the case. Mm-hmm. So it's the same with these specialized units. If you have a corporal and it's something that new that y'all dug into, let that corporal file that case. Yes, the officer can write the warrant, all that stuff. Let the corporal within that unit and just become a self-sufficient unit. Don't dump it off onto another. So I'm 100% with you. But we're talking about changing
I know.
a set pattern of ways.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
I know.
It makes me laugh because I see a lot of really good officers that I think have the opportunity to learn. Because from my very selfish perspective, if you're writing warrants, because writing warrants takes time. You sit down on a computer, you think through the elements. I think there's a lot more of the process in there because, there's not the imminence of it. Whereas the affidavits, you're in the jail writing room. You've got surrounded by a bunch of other officers laughing, joking. The judge is waiting on you. The jail sergeant's waiting on you. You got to get back out with your team. And so I don't think you spend as much time reflecting and analyzing what you're doing. I think if you spent more time writing those warrants, it will help on the affidavits when you are in that situation.
100%.
And then for me, I get better affidavits. So
yeah,
that's my real selfish reason for why I think that's a good idea.
But it goes into, we're not talking about a job. We're talking about a career.
Right.
We're talking about what I consider a profession.
Right.
And in that profession, when you do start to write warrants, you really do start to see a bigger picture of how everything works. And then you understand, like, I filed this case and now my prosecutor is like, dude, like, no, like, I need this, that, and the other. And,
right.
And the learning process of writing warrants really starts to come full circle. And you become a better writer. I can't tell you, most of the time when I write a warrant, I write it that day and in its entirety. I send it around and then I sit on it. I don't send it to y'all because I want to come back at it after I've forgotten it.
Right.
And I want to read it.
Right.
And when I read it and I'm like, that don't make sense. Like, what was I thinking there? Okay. Never write a warrant in one day.
Yeah.
I don't. Unless you're in a specialized unit.
Gun violence, homicide. Yeah. There's a lot of people that need to write it. We as the public would prefer they write it quickly.
I'm property crimes.
Yes.
I'm property crimes.
You can wait a day.
I can wait. There's no pressing matters going on.
Exactly.
Totally different. Yeah. Unless you get lucky, like one time.
No, let's go with this. Let's just all the SWAT warrants. You write it on one day. We'll have SWAT just hang out for 24 hours. I'm sure they'll love the overtime. And then the next day we'll come back and we'll sign it.
Yeah.
No, there are definitely some groups that their warrants are done quickly, and it's a credit to them for being able to write them quickly. But
now, in your position, do you get search warrants and stuff like that presented to you?
Yes.
Okay, so you get those. Now, this is one thing I've always kind of wondered. I have to take cell phone warrants
to a district court judge.
Judge.
Just what the law says.
So what's the difference?
I don't really know. I have my opinions.
Please share us.
My thoughts are that the state legislatures are the ones who came up with that law, and for whatever reason, they only want a select few group of people signing those warrants. But when you think about like what a cell phone is, name something in your life that's more personal to you. I mean, you want to talk about an invasion of privacy, like handing over my phone to somebody. I don't want anybody looking at my phone.
Right.
And so I think that's the theory behind it, is that, you invite people into your home, you invite people into your car, sometimes women will be like, yeah, I reach in my purse and get that, there's that level of privacy, but like who hands over their phone? It's like, here, just look, everything in here, carte blanche. Nobody does that. We all find our cell phones to be the most personal item we have.
That's not true. Some have.
Well,
some of them like, hey, you don't mind if I search? Can you sign this waiver for me? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the defense attorney in me that says, no, the answer is, can I search? No, get a warrant.
Yeah.
Like, we always joke around the time that, if I ever get pulled over on a traffic stop, good luck to you, because everything's going to be like, get a warrant. Not because I have anything to hide, but because I firmly believe in that process so strongly that. Okay.
Let's discuss that. So when you get pulled over, there are certain things that you don't have to divulge, but I would recommend, this is me as a cop, if your basic information, your name, where you live, the stuff that I would get on a normal traffic stop. It's when you get those people that are like, and it's not necessarily a sovereign citizen thing, but I think there's this whole TikTok movement. It was like, I don't have to ask questions. And they're just sitting there filming. I'm like, hey, you're sending the wrong message.
Right.
There is a level of like, I don't even know what to call it. Like you can say I'm not answering anything.
Right. But you can do it nicely. You can do it respectfully.
Yeah.
So, officer, I understand you need my license and my proof of financial responsibility. I'm willing to provide that, but I'm not going to answer any questions.
Okay.
I'm going to exercise my constitutional right not to answer any questions. Right. The officer say, where are you coming from? I don't have to answer that. No, I don't want to.
Right. But if I ask your name,
Mhm.
what's your argument as a defense attorney?
I mean, there is no argument. You are required to provide your name if an officer asks for it, your truthful name.
Okay.
Now, it does make me laugh because, what's your name? If you go by a different name, like if I went by my middle name and I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
my name is Ann, yeah, I'm not necessarily lying because if you're called that your entire life,
Right.
like
my stepdad or my father-in-law, his name's Thomas Gregory Jones, but he goes by Greg.
yeah,
And that's how his whole family, like his dad goes by his middle name. That dad goes by, that's just a tradition in their family.
yeah. And sometimes you're nervous because an officer is asking you your name. You're going to go with what your details are, So for me, like on the failed ID warrants or fugitive giving false info, if they gave you middle name, but they gave their social security number and their date of birth, right? And they just gave the middle name, I'm sorry, I'm not taking that case because, my mom's name is Antoinette. She goes by Tony. And if somebody asks her what her name is, my dad was the only person in the world who called her Antoinette. So she's always going to answer, my name is Tony. My name is Tony. It's not intentionally giving a false name. That's what I'm known by.
Right.
Now, granted, that should be, best practice is if you get pulled over, you're giving your name, give your full, complete name.
Yeah.
But there's no argument to that. But, the conversation of where are you going from? I'm not going to answer those questions because I'm eventually going to admit that I was speeding. Let's be honest. Like, that's what it's designed for. Investigating. You get people to admit all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, as a prosecutor, once body cam came in, everybody admits to speeding. Oh, I'm so sorry, officer. I didn't know how fast I was going. You can't lose at trial with that.
Yeah, right.
Like, it wasn't even fun as a prosecutor after that.
Yeah.
But so that would be me.
It's a fun process as a cop, like learning your series of questions and learning how to get to what it is you're looking for.
Right.
Because at first you suck. You're so bad at it.
Right.
Hey, I pulled you over for this. Why were you doing that? I wasn't. Oh, fuck.
What do I say now?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna write you a ticket.
Right.
Yeah. And then you end up they fight you on it, and
Right.
you didn't calibrate your shit that day, and all these different avenues. But with your job, I had a specific question I wanted to ask on dealing with tickets and stuff like that. What is it that you're looking for when, like, let's say I'm Joe Blow citizen, I gotta go to court. A lot of times they don't have a representation, right?
Right.
They're there on their own. So you as a judge, like, what is your obligation for those that don't come with like a prop? Because who wants to hire an attorney for a traffic ticket?
I mean, if you're going to take it to trial, if you want to play the game, you got to have all the tools available to you. So, I mean, I've definitely lost by a pro se. It's happened, but
you have as a prosecutor?
As a prosecutor, yeah.
Oh, that had to be embarrassing.
Oh, it was hilarious. So it was a public no, it was a urinating in public ticket.
Okay.
So one of the elements is you have to prove that they were reckless, and the particular judge I was in front of. So the guy was out in public. He went to a car wash. He went to the corner, and he was peeing in public. And the judge found that he was not reckless in his actions because he found a corner in a car wash where there was nobody around.
What asshole cop wrote him a ticket for that?
I don't remember.
What a dick.
But I don't remember who it was.
I would definitely not have written that.
It was one of those where, okay, great. But also, that's few and far between. It's rare that when you're going up a trained licensed attorney, and keep in mind that the trained licensed attorney has already looked at the case, already looked at the body camera, already talked to the officer and decided I have everything I need. I'm ready to go to trial. So even in that situation, even with a good defense attorney, you're only going to take the cases to trial that you think have merit. You have to have probable cause on every element. And the reality is you have to believe that you're going to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So, I've always, for me, I would hire an attorney, because the other thing is that an attorney knows, if nothing else, an attorney knows how to cross-examine an officer. The general public, that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do as an attorney.
Yeah.
And so being able to pick apart, like knowing, yes, you could do a lot of research and try and figure it out and watch YouTube videos. But the bottom line is that the attorneys actually do it every day. They know which officers, their weaknesses, their strengths, they know what's required of them, and they do a fantastic job of it.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think our defense bar here in Tarrant County is fantastic. They're all really good attorneys and they try really hard and they represent their clients zealously. And, for the most part, it's fairly affordable on a traffic ticket. So if nothing else, it saves you an appearance in court. So you only have to go once for the trial and you can avoid some of the other stuff. So you avoid missing a day of work. But
Okay. I got two more things I definitely want to hit at minimum.
All right.
Because you keep reminding me of other things. Like I said, it's very rare to get a judge, so I'm glad that we're doing this.
This is not anything that you and I haven't had conversations
True.
with and chilling outside of this, so I'm always happy to answer questions.
So power. Okay. I have seen cases where a judge is like, I'm fining you this. And then the person keeps chirping. And they're like, okay, now it's this. Okay, now it's this. And they just keep going up that ladder. And this is on video. Like, this is stuff I've seen. Or I'm holding you in contempt for 90 days. You're going to go sit jail for 90 days. And then they just keep talking shit. And they're like, okay, 120. Okay. And they just keep, what is the scale on that? How do you, is there a judge school where you're like, I'm allowed to do
yes.
I'm allowed to do this? Like, how do you guys figure that out?
Yes, there actually is a judges school for municipal court judges and justices of the peace. The Texas Municipal Court Education Center has a judges school that they host multiple judges schools throughout the year. So you are required to do, I think it's like, I don't even remember, 15 hours of continuing education.
A year?
Yes. I know it's nothing compared to police officers.
Holy
we don't carry guns,
shit.
so that's why. I know. I get that all the time. Like, wait, what? That's it? I know. Yes.
Are you, okay, question. Are you armed while you're being a judge?
Well, the city that we work for has a policy against employees carrying. And I also, again, work in the jail, so you're not armed coming into my place either. True.
I would want my judges having a gun.
Do I have a license to carry? Yes. Damn and right. Am I quite proficient at it? Also, yes.
Hell yeah.
So yes, I am. My dad taught me well. And
you're a Glock girl, I bet.
I am 100% a Glock girl. Yep. I have a 43, a 19, and then a first gen 17.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then I have a 38 special. My first gun my dad ever bought me was a Taurus 38 special. So that was a good start. But many, many years ago, I got my license to carry back when if you qualified with a revolver, you could only carry a revolver. So I qualified with my dad's Glock 17. And then
very nice.
After I became a judge, that was one of my first gifts to myself was I bought my very own Glock 43 because I have small hands. So
yeah, mine are kind of in the middle. I don't have big hands, but
the 17 was too much for me to try to control. But yeah, and I try to go to the range as much as I can. I've been shooting with different officers, and they've helped me actually become fairly proficient. So nice. I enjoy firearms. I'm a responsible gun owner, very responsible gun owner.
Well, you're in Texas, it fits.
I am, yes, and from Utah, where the public schools used to close the 1st of October for deer season. So. And real deer season, I'm sorry. I know Texans love their deer hunting, but it's just not the same as a Utah deer hunt.
That's how I am in Michigan.
Yes.
I try to tell them. I'm like, I lived in a time where I remember people going to high school with gun racks and putting their shotgun back. And then this is growing up in Flint, which is very urban type city, but you're surrounded by a culture of deer hunting and outdoorsmanship. So Michigan's very unique. So. And
that's
Utah.
Yeah, that was my dad. I remember when I was young, we had a pickup truck and he had a rifle rack back there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'd go deer and pheasant hunting and
the pheasant hunting out there, I miss it.
My dad did elk hunting every year. So
I went 4 years in a row, skunked 4 years in a row.
It took my dad a long, long time to bag his first elk. But the year he did, him and his brother, they both got one. So one of them, I'll have to brag about Jake. We named him Jake. He was a 7-point royal bull elk. He was massive.
Wow.
Yes. I will show you a picture when we're done. But he and his brother. So Jake was old and very tough, but they also shot a really young elk that was delicious. And, I grew up in a very hunting culture, but that being said, I firmly believe that if you were going to carry a firearm, you better know how to use it.
Yes.
And, I don't think you should just be able to walk in and buy a gun with no training and experience whatsoever, because I think that's dangerous.
Just like getting a driver's license.
Exactly.
That's how I look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
it's hard because we get torn. Got the Constitution.
Right.
And this is just me. I'm telling you my personal thought on it. I'm about the Constitution. I swore to protect it both as a police and as military.
Right.
It's great. But my personal thought on it is just like what you said. Like, if it's an awesome power to have, and you should know how to use it, just like a 2,000-pound missile that's parked out in your driveway.
Right.
You need to be trained on it and how to use it. So
right.
I'm with you.
I agree. Constitution is very important, and we have these rights, but I think you also, as a citizen, have responsibilities.
Yes.
It goes both ways. So, yeah, I'm definitely a Glock girl, 100%. So
back to where we were talking about. We were talking about judges going to school. Like,
yes,
how do you know, like, how you hold them in contempt? How you can tell them they got to pay these fines? Like, how do you get that?
You learn on the job. So I definitely didn't know how to hold people in contempt. I don't really enjoy that process.
Do you yell at, you're in contempt? Do you do that?
No.
Like the movies?
I've tried not to. So as a new judge, your temper got the better of you in a time or two. But I don't enjoy that. And it's not about me. I don't care. So I have a rule in jail. I get it. You want to curse at me one time, it's fine. It's not fine, but I'm going to warn you and say, hey, look, I know you're having a bad day. I know you don't want to be here. I get that. But this is a courtroom and I am a judge. And because of that, you do need to at least respect the position that you're in. I don't want you to use that word again, but as long as you don't use it again, we're fine. If you use it again, we're going to have a different conversation. And that's why I said I had to change my language to my intent is to release you. Yeah. Because, the next thing out of their mouth
I'm actually going to steal that from you.
It helps.
Because I've never verbed it that way. As when I deal with people, my intent, I will actually probably start adopting that.
Cool. Well, definitely. So, my intent is to release you tonight, but if you continue to act this way, then I may have to find you in contempt. And then you're going to talk about staying here. And we don't want that. And 99% of the time that just stops it. People are like, oh yes, it's like a reality check, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just said that.
Yeah.
But there is the 1% of the time where it's no matter what I say, they're going to find a way to be disrespectful in a variety of different reasons.
They've been through the system.
Yes.
Usually.
It's really not. I always tell people I'll take arraigning somebody on a murder charge over a Class C any day, because the people who've been through the system get how it works. They get that I'm doing my job. And generally, because of the way I run my arraignments, they're pretty happy with me. Hey, this is what we're here for. This is why you're talking to me. Here's the next step of the process. It's all about procedural justice. If people understand the process, they feel like they're getting a fair shake. So I explain the process to everybody. And then, I've had other inmates, when people are being disrespectful, be like, dude, shut up. She's helping you. Like, she's doing things. So I've had inmates control my courtroom for me. But, at some point in time, people do get disrespectful, and it's weird to say, but I've had to hold somebody in contempt for calling me pretty. It sounds terrible.
Well, I get it, because I do that to my wife when she says something dumb.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a good thing you're pretty. Yeah, I get that.
I'm like, honey, you're so pretty. And she's like, you're an asshole.
Well, you do that in my courtroom and you're going to spend some time in North Richland Hills.
I would never.
No, it was,
I'm scared of judges.
Thank you for that opinion. That's not relevant to what we're talking about today. We're going to stay on topic. And then it was like he went down this path of,
he's trying to get the digits.
Yeah, well, that was not the way to do it.
Fancy meeting you here, Judge.
Yeah.
Are you single?
No. Nope.
That's awesome.
No, he and then it got really disrespectful. So it was like, okay, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Well, how disrespectful did it get?
Very raunchy.
Really? Mm-hmm. In the courtroom?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is. How do you not, like, okay, this is me. I would have laughed. I would have been like.
I laughed. I didn't laugh at the time, because it's like, it's not, like I said, it's not about me. I don't care what you say about me. I am Melanie. I'm my own person.
But you're very good at being professional. I'm not. Like, if that would have happened in front of me, I would have laughed.
I laughed when it was done. I mean, we laugh all the time when people look out. We're like, okay, I can't believe that just happened, but okay. there is that, but at the same time, I'm professional because it's the position I'm in, that the state of Texas and the city council has trusted me with this awesome job. Yeah. And I do have a lot of power, and I do make the decisions about people who are losing their liberty. And so it's not about me, but it's about that role of the court. And it's my own respect for the court. Practicing in front of judges for so long, my own respect for the position that they hold. It's really easy to shut off the Melanie part and just be what I need to be out of respect for that position, out of respect for all of the judges in Texas and the United States. It's a very humbling experience that I'm included as part of it. And I want to be the best representation as I can as a judge.
Yeah.
And so I don't really care if you curse at me on the street. Fine. I'm just going to laugh and mug it off. But if you do that, knowing that that's the role I'm in, I can't allow that. And it has nothing to do with hurting my feelings or anything about me or my hubris. It has to do with my respect for the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
And so I've had to do that. But luckily I've learned there are some things that I've learned to handle better, and changing my phraseology a little bit has helped. And so I say that now, next week's going to be terrible, but it's been a while since I've had any major issues in my courtroom.
Yeah.
So hopefully that continues. And that only applies to the courtroom. Up and down the hallway, you can yell whatever you want. I can't do anything about it. And I get called a lot of things up and down the hallway, but that's the difference.
Well, you're in the jail too. That's different.
Right.
Yeah.
You can call Melanie all the names you want in the hallway, but once you come into the courtroom, it's not about me. I'm not Melanie. I'm the judge representing the state of Texas and the people, and it's that position that you have to respect.
Side question.
Yes.
During Halloween,
yes,
is this a reasonable request from a cop that on Halloween, if you're working as a judge, that you have to wear a powdered wig and the old school robes? I think that should be
asking that for years.
It's the only time I can get you guys to respect the courts the way I think they should be respected.
Yes.
I want to see the powdered wigs and the old robes come back.
I wear the robe. I mean, anytime I do an arraignment, I put on the robe. It's really hot. People don't think about that, but they're really hot and uncomfortable. But definitely do that. I've not yet worn the powdered wig. I probably have enough gray hair to pull it off though. So
is it Atkinson?
Atkinson.
Atkinson. I always say Atkins. I thought I had him this close.
He would be the one to do it.
I had him this close to doing it, and he's like, "Man, if I can find one, I'll try to see if I can make it happen." He went to another court, different area, but I think it's awesome, and I think it would diffuse any potential.
I don't think so.
Court? You don't think so?
No. I diffuse it enough just by putting on the regular robe.
So what I like to do during Christmas time is I will wear a set of lights that I bought on Amazon.
I remember that.
Christmas lights. Yeah, I wear them every year. Any part-time gig that I work that's it's in December, I'm wearing the Christmas lights.
Right, I think I saw you on the street wearing them once.
Yeah, and I have found that it more often than not every time. I can't even say that there was a time where somebody got pissed off at me. Like, a lot of times they get mad and then they see me and I'm wearing the lights and I'm trying to talk to them, and they're lighthearted.
It's funny.
It really works. So
everybody has those tricks and things. And I think it's, for me, I've had to learn to not be so much Melanie and kind of learn to put on that role of a judge and adjust my tone and my interaction with people, because most people don't come into my court and be like, "Hey, judge." Half the time, even detectives walk in and they'll look right at me and be like, "Hey, is the judge here?"
Really?
That's me. Oh yeah.
Shit.
When I first started, that was all the time. It happens still occasionally. And one person was he was not with our city. He was from a different agency, and was it a show? That's me.
You're young. You're young for a judge.
I'm young. I'm female, and that kind of blew his mind. So,
I've worked with more female judges than males.
I think it's 50-50 in Fort Worth right now. But this older gentleman from a different city, it just blew his mind, and he asked the clerk, "Is she being serious?" And she was like, yeah.
Pretty risky to lie.
Right in front of me. He's like, I wasn't wearing the robe, but I was dressed in a suit. I walked out of my office, they're like, "Okay, I'll call the judge. Hey, are you here for a warrant?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm here to see the judge." That would be me. And he looked at the clerk and was like, "Is she serious?" And the poor clerk was like, "Yeah, and she's about to lose it. So yeah." I said, "Do you want your warrant signed or not?" I
will give you this credit, that you and I have always been so cool with each other. But when I come in and we're working, but we talk like this.
Mhm.
But as soon as it's game time, you can you can see the switch. I can say I can physically see the switch. Like you you do exactly what you say you do. You turn into the representative of the state of Texas
Yep.
and the judge, and it's cool. It's I respect that, because I know what I'm getting, and every
Right.
time, and it's consistent,
Right.
which is all you can ask from a judge. Be
Yeah.
consistent.
Be consistent,
Yeah.
and be fair and impartial. That's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
what
I've got the personality. I don't take anything personally. I'm like, fuck, okay. More often than not, I look at myself and I'm like, where'd you screw up, Levine?
Yeah, what did you wrong?
I did something wrong. I screwed up somewhere. So, but you're always very cool about educating. And that is especially one of the reasons why I wanted you on here. I've got one more topic that before we took the bathroom break that I think is actually the most important, especially for myself, because
it's a hot topic issue.
It is. So you see these cases where they go out and they kill somebody, and then inevitably their criminal history gets looked up, and you see like,
definitely,
okay, this guy, he's bonded out and he'd robbed 4 different people. We're not talking a burglary. There's a difference between burglary and robbery and all this stuff. So,
right.
But you see that and you're like, how did that happen? So you as a judge, what is your perspective on bond? What's the requirements? Like, how does all that work?
Well, so now in the state of Texas, whether it was to address that issue or whatever, the state legislators come up with some new requirements for setting bond. So as of April 1st, we are required to look at what's called a public safety report. And it's put together by DPS and managed through an online system where it will have somebody's criminal history. And a judge is required to review that criminal history and certify that they reviewed it before they set a bond. In addition to that, I think the intent was to also include information about whether or not they've skipped bond, skipped bail before, missed court dates or whatever, to take all that in consideration. Because the judge, when they're looking at it, again, when we start talking about the Constitution, that's a constitutional protection, the right to bond out, and when you are arresting somebody, you are taking away their freedom. You are saying you are not free to go unless you post this bond or meet these requirements. And that's a really awesome, scary decision. And so when judges are looking at that, they're not just looking at public safety. Yeah, you don't want to let a murderer out without anything, but the same Constitution that protects your right to speech and protects your right to carry weapons is the same Constitution that protects your ability to not have unreasonably high bonds. And so you can't just say, oh, you murdered somebody, you can't get out. That's a constitutional violation. So Texas requires you to look at that pre-sentence report and certify off on it. And so the judges have to take into consideration. So in the city that we work in, the bond is really set by the county. It's really a situation where when they go through our city facility and we find probable cause or there's a warrant from one of our judges, then they go over to the county, and it's the county magistrate that has to review all of that. And they're going to take into consideration everything. They're going to take into consideration criminal history. They're going to take into consideration if they've ever missed any other court dates in the past. And they're going to take into consideration their financial history. So you have to make sure that you are not just setting bonds that are unreasonably high, because what that results in is that people with money can bond out and people in poverty cannot. And that's a fundamental unfairness. And there are some cases that, why require a cash bond at any side? The possession of marijuana under 2 ounces. Nobody's going to get high and hurt somebody else.
Right.
They're not a threat to public safety. So you have to consider what the charge is. Now, violent crimes, family violence, you do have to, in those situations, the public safety requirement might weigh more heavily than some other requirements, but it's a balancing act. And to be honest, I'm sure it seems very arbitrary. There's no set bond schedule. There's not just like, hey, you murdered somebody, it's $500,000. Right. We try not to do that. So that's actually illegal. You may have different judges that have different perspectives. I know, I would get a lot of complaints on our warrants. We would put a recommended bond. This is all before April 1st. we put a recommended bond. So I put a recommendation, on a murder charge, $250,000 bond. They go to Tarrant County and the judge would do a $15,000 bond. And detectives would come in and be angry at me. Give me that look right there, that look right there. Like, what are you talking about? But you have to understand that they're looking at the entire story. When you bring me a warrant, I'm only hearing your side of the story.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing what you have to say, what's in here. Before April 1st, I didn't have any requirement to look at their criminal history. Would I ask about it? Hey, is there anything I need to know about? But at the end of the day, you have to balance all of that and make a decision.
Yeah.
And then they have bond hearings where, a defendant can go in front of a judge with an attorney to help get that bond reduced. And I always said, especially with the old system, I hear your side of the story when you come in and I'm setting the bond. The Tarrant County magistrates, they were hearing the defendant's side of the story. So of course it's going to go down because they're hearing that more human story. I'm hearing only the police officer's story. So I'm hearing how, this is all the crimes they committed and this is all the things they've done wrong. And they're the ones that are facing the actual person. I wasn't seeing the person. So you always balance that. They're human beings. You don't want to keep them in jail necessarily, but those magistrates are the ones who hear what they're struggling with.
Yeah. I got, I promise this isn't a bragging moment, but I got a commendation for merit, from our department.
Why not brag about that? That's awesome.
Well, the premise of the whole thing was we had a victim that had been repeatedly victimized for 5 years.
Oh, jeez.
And I see this in what started out as a home invasion. That's really all it was. I ended up getting a $250,000 bond.
That's really high.
Yeah, on this guy. And that got bumped down to $100,000, which
that's still really high.
Which was fine because I knew this guy didn't have the ability to get that. But my problem was, I'm like, and this is me trying to learn. I have one judge that found it necessary to put a $250,000 bond. What I didn't know was that when the county judge makes their decision, they're going based off of 2 arguments. I didn't know that, so thank you for that part. So that was one of the, you just clarified that for me. So now I understand that. And then the thing that I found, and I want to know your opinion on this as a judge, I found out that we fucked up is basically what I found out in this. Like, this guy had been robbed twice, like ag assault robbed, and we got theft of person. Like, that's what ended up going on this guy because of the detective, not because of not because of the prosecutor. And I'm looking at him like, what the fuck is going on? I read it and I'm like, okay, we screwed up here. And then I'm looking at the court's decisions on some other things and I'm like, all right, they screwed up here, but that was because the detective took him down the wrong path. And you got obviously something that was clearly another ag robbery that was a criminal trespass. And I'm like, what in the shit is going on? This guy was mentally disabled and elderly, both. And he's being basically what I considered, what do they call that? Extorted. He's being extorted over the course of 5 years by this guy. And I see that we fucked up. And I'm like, this guy hasn't gotten justice at all. And to give you an example, the last time, the home invasion I was working, he had this guy's whole dossier, his suspect's dossier.
Goodness.
And I'm like, what the hell? And it's his older brother. His older brother's 84 years old, who's giving me this stuff. And he's like, this guy's been a problem. He's always stealing his money and doing all this shit. So that's when I was like, I went to bat. I was like,
that's the victim. You're like, I feel so strongly about.
Yeah. So I went all in on that guy. But that was one of the things that's what made me want to know the question of why I just got a higher bond on a guy that I haven't even seen homicide suspects get. Why? What? I've never had anybody explain that. And I'm definitely not going to question the judge giving me that bond. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. Nobody ever questions when it's a high bond.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. No police officers question when it's high bond. The general public does. Yeah. I mean, bonds are not punishment. So we were kind of talking about that whole thing about, here's your fine and it going up and up, or contempt and going up. That's how this conversation got started. Okay, we're back to where I want to talk about. Bonds should never be used as a punishment. That's not what they're there for. Bonds are a public safety tool. They're to make sure that you're balancing public safety with somebody's ability to be free. And I mean, what good is the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or any amendments if we are taking away somebody's freedom? That's the fundamental part of our Constitution.
Right.
So by setting a high bond or punishing somebody with a high bond, you are taking away an innocent person's freedom.
Because we're all innocent
You
until
are
proven guilty.
innocent until the state proves beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of the offense. And if you set a $200,000 bond on a criminal trespass charge, that is wrong.
Right.
But so judges do have to take all that into consideration. Like I said, judges are the ones that call the game. So I know what the detectives want. Yeah, you want me to put a $500,000 bond on everything? Not going to happen, because I have to balance the freedom of the defendant and the liberty of the defendant, and that goes far beyond a cash bond amount. To me, that taking away that freedom and setting it so high, I'm never going to use that as a punishment. I actually watched a video the other day of a judge who, a woman was borderline disrespectful in court. It was on John Oliver, but he was showing a video of a woman. I think she had a possession of marijuana charge. He set her bond at $1,000, and he asked her a question, and she said, yeah. And he said, yes or no? She said, yeah. Yes or no? Listen, she's in jail. Just calm down. But he ended up, well, now your bond is $2,000. That is inappropriate. You don't punish somebody with a higher bond. You don't use the Constitution to punish somebody like that.
I see what you're saying.
Now, contempt is different. If she's saying something that is disrespectful directly to the judge or directly to the court, then that's different. That's the vehicle for punishing somebody for severely inappropriate behavior in court or severely disrespectful. You can't let people disrespect you, because it's the position of the judge. They can't disrespect the court. But you don't use the bond as punishment. That's okay, fine. You have a contempt hearing. So for me, municipal court, I can hold somebody in contempt for up to 3 days. That's it. And then I can also fine them up to $100. If they don't pay the $100, then they stay one extra night in jail. So a maximum of 4.
So 72 hours is the best you got.
Pretty much. Yep. So it depends on how bad you want to drop that F-bomb for me.
Right.
You want 3 days? Great. So, and I mean, it's definitely happened, but, the setting a bond, and it's never personal to the detective. It's never like, hey, I like you, I'm going to set a higher bond. That's not how it works.
No, and I've never taken it that way. I don't know the parameters, and
right.
it really is different judge to judge.
It really
you're
is.
just like, I don't get it. Why did again, like with this one, I got 250. I didn't expect that. I expected 50,000. That honestly on the for me trying to show a pattern. And this victim had been truly victimized, and that was what I was trying to show. This is a public safety issue,
right?
And
he's going to keep going back to the same victim over and over again.
And when we talk about public safety, it doesn't matter if it's 500 victims or just one. It's all the same, because it's the public,
right.
And that's the way I view it as a cop. So I really tried to put an emphasis on that, and it worked in the way that I hoped it would. And I didn't know how do judges. How do you, is it set by somebody that mentors you? Is that kind of how you get those parameters? Kind
of, yeah. I definitely learned a lot from, I trained with Judge Gonzalez and Judge Atkinson and a lot of the judges. So it's definitely mentorship. I think you kind of learn your thresholds. Like I knew, kind of this would be, I would say on an average normal case for homicide, usually around 250 was kind of my threshold, but depending on that situation. But it's funny, I had one of our PD people who worked in ID came in the other day. And so we haven't been recommending bonds since April 1st because of the way that public safety reporting system works. We don't have access to it yet. We will eventually, but there's a lot of things that go into it. And since we aren't setting the bonds, it was really just recommendations. It really wasn't necessary for us to be doing that. So we just leave it all up to the county now. But before I would set bonds, and I had a ID employee come in, and she's like, "Hey, I just saw one of your warrants. You set a $750,000 bond."
Oh shit!
I knew exactly the case. I knew all the details of it. I remembered every single one. I know anything over 250, I can articulate every single one of those cases because it's the kind of case that stays with you. It was an animal cruelty case. It was beyond cruel, beyond upsetting, and it was an absolute danger to the public. And I told her the case and she's like, well, I didn't read the warrant. I don't know what it is. And she goes back to ID and she calls me. She's like, you were spot on. I signed it 2 years ago. So I didn't set that bond lightly.
Yeah.
There's been 2 situations where I recommended $1 million bond, and I can tell you the details of those cases: multiple victims, homicide,
Yeah.
extreme danger to the public. I can tell you all those details because that's something I know, reasonably speaking, that nobody's going to be able to bond out on 750 or $1 million.
Yeah.
I know that. And so that's me taking away their freedom while they wait for a trial, and I have no idea when that's going to be. And I don't do that lightly.
Yeah.
I firmly believe in people's ability to be free. Now, not be free and commit crimes, like that's not okay.
Yeah.
But if you,
Which does happen.
it does
quite a lot.
It
Yeah.
happens, but I don't want to live in a world where I'm afraid of people being out on bond. Like there's also a lot of people who are out that
Yeah.
understand, hey, I made a mistake and I'm trying to better my life, and I'd rather they be out and working towards building a better life than sitting in jail and just waiting, and there's no progress that happens.
Yeah.
You figure you arrest somebody, let's say on a possession charge, they're not any real great danger to the community. They're more harmful to themselves than others, but they get a felony amount, they're on possession charge. Well, you're not working, you're not making your car payments, your car gets repossessed, you're not paying your apartment or your mortgage, so that gets taken away. You could lose all your stuff while you're just literally sitting in jail. If you don't have other people who are helping you out, you could lose everything you have just while waiting for your trial date.
Yeah.
Not even while, being punished. The punishment part hasn't even happened yet, but you're just awaiting your trial date and you could lose everything you have. So, bonds have to be taken very seriously, and that balance has to be made. And again, with the detectives, it's the same thing, that 4 corners of the document. You have to understand that the magistrates are going to only read your affidavit plus the criminal history from the pre-sentence report, plus an actual conversation with the defendant about their financial history. So if you want a judge to know it, it better be in that warrant that you're writing.
Yeah.
And that's how you got that bond on that, is that
Yeah.
you put, this is the pattern of it, so the judge could see the pattern of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't think anything about it.
And it's an important part that I try to teach new detectives. I'm like, listen, like if you've got, you can't be upset at the product you get if you don't put the work into it. And it just depends on how hard you want to go at it. And you have to weigh and measure everything, just like you said. And I equate that to true victims versus your victims. And I understand totally different on the judge side and in the prosecution side. But for us, we have so many cases, we have so many things. You have to figure out where you want to invest your energy.
Right.
And so getting somebody like that, knowing that guy could sleep at night, like it was a huge case for me. Like I truly, like I still, like I will call, and just make sure that they're okay. Like, because the guy lived in fear. I never really in my whole career, yes, I've met, domestic violence victims and stuff like that, but here's a guy that lived in fear from a stranger. That's weird. That's a weird thing. A stranger made you live in fear. You couldn't even go to a Jack in the Box. He got robbed at a Jack in the Box, which was a theft from person. That's what it was called. And I'm like, that is insane to me. And he's mentally, he was just functional enough to live on his own, but he had a caretaker, which was his brother. So, and the worst part was he really, the caretaker reminded me of my grandpa.
Oh,
that was the worst
that's
part.
hard.
Yeah. So that's
hard.
That's where I really went hard in the paint, because just like your grandma, my grandpa was a huge influence in my life. And I went hard in the paint on that particular call. And say what you want. I think I'd give everybody a fair shake on my cases, but yeah, I went really hard on that one. And
that makes me go back to our conversation about DAs and how they pick their cases and everything. And it's the exact same thing for them. They can't try everything. You can't go hard on every single case. You have to balance your work product the best that you can. And that's why sometimes your cases get pled out without any conversations. And, just like okay, this isn't a true victim. I'm not going to, put all my heart and soul into it, but this one I will. That's how DAs operate too.
Yep. Well, I think we have hit everything that I have been trying to hit, but I want to say this. You are a fucking natural
oh gosh
at this. So
Yeah, I like to talk.
I want to invite you to at least be a part of some guest appearances that I may have
Sure.
where we can tag team against, another guest, not against, but like bounce things off
Mhm.
of each other from two different sides of the criminal justice system. And that's the whole point of this, is to educate and show people different ideas and mindsets and stuff like that, so the public can digest everything that you and I just
Right.
talked about and make decisions for themselves. But
I'm very happy to be here. I'm really grateful that you asked me, and I got to give props to my chief, who he did a podcast a few months ago, and he was really excited about it. And so when I went to him and said, "Hey, how do you feel about this?" He was like, "Oh, I'm all for it." So obviously, my opinions and everything expressed on the show are for me,
right.
not on behalf of the city that I work for. But I enjoyed it, and I'm with you. I like educating. I like teaching people how the criminal justice system works. I think one of the things I love about working in municipal court is it is being a friends and family court. And we really try to help people understand that we're not here to just get you all the time, and officers aren't there just to ruin your lives, that there's a
Yeah.
balancing. We want to help you. We do a lot of court in the community events where we actually physically go out to community centers and process cases, so that it takes away the fear of, oh, I'm going to go to court and get arrested. No, you're just going to walk down the street to your local community center and lift your warrants. And so I feel like this is just another extension of educating the courts in the community, educating people in your community. And my door is always open to ask questions. And sometimes I'll have to say, hey, I can't answer that, put it in writing and bring it back to me, and then we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
I'm always happy to answer questions and explain a little bit more about what goes on, behind the scenes.
Well, one of the things you pointed out that I think is important is we do hold an awesome power. I can take your freedom away. You can take someone's freedom away. The
Mm-hmm.
prosecutor. So these three steps,
Mm-hmm.
all those steps, we have the power to take your freedom away. And being reminded of it, as much as I set out with this podcast to educate the public, more often than not, the feedback I get is I'm educating first responders,
Right.
which is
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And it definitely drives doing what I've been doing. But it doesn't hurt to constantly reaffirm or refresh like that reminder. Like you
Absolutely.
have the ability to take somebody's freedom away. And
Right.
when you show up, just the uniform alone, the judge's robes, I mean,
Mhm.
those in themselves are an awesome power.
Right.
And it doesn't hurt to remind yourself, like, look, you've got the ability to take people's freedom away, and that is not something to take lightly. And I like taking the time to educate and getting a judge. Thank you very much,
You're
Your
welcome.
Honor. To have a judge on, and she showed up to the house, and I was like, "Hey, Sarah, this is Melanie, aka Your Honor. I don't know how to say this right now. It's really weird."
Yes. It took a little bit. It was definitely, because I literally was Monday prosecutor Melanie, and everybody's calling me Melanie. And the next day it's like, hey, I'm Judge Houston. And it's been a little bit. It's
Yeah.
actually funny how much I miss hearing people call me Melanie.
Yeah.
Nobody does anymore. So
Nope.
it's and definitely not something, you walk into my court, hey, Judge Houston, how are you doing today? And everybody's gotten pretty good about that. So.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. It is odd. And I think you and I started about the same time. Like I started as a detective, and you started as a judge, and
I think
so
so.
we kind of grew
Yeah,
together.
we did.
Which either way, I've had a good time. Like I said, you've always taken the time to educate, and I've had my favorites, obviously, as judges go.
Everybody does.
And it has nothing to do with me getting my way as more as it's been just being a people person,
Right.
and being able and it's important for people to see the human side, especially with a judge. I mean,
Right.
you guys are you're the scariest of them all. It is.
I get it. I do, because I'm also terrified of judges, but my clerk this week told me I'm approachable, and I think that was probably the best compliment I've ever had, that I don't want to be scary. I don't want people to feel like they can't come talk to me. If I make a mistake, I want somebody to tell me, hey, you made a mistake right here. Let's fix it, so that I can fix it early on, not, let it go. Oh, I'm too afraid to tell her she made a mistake. It's no, tell me that I'm human. I make mistakes all the time, but it's not really that you make the mistakes. It's how you respond, how you react to it. And I'd rather have open door. Hey, come tell me I made a mistake. We'll work through it. We'll figure out what I need to do. And then we can move on here, instead of letting it become a bigger problem down the road.
Yep.
So yeah. Well, I had a great time. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm happy I was able to make it.
Wonderful beer.
I'm glad you like Maple Branch.
Very
like
good.
I said, great local place. So I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to go test it out.
Yeah,
Chris-
very good.
Now
Well,
I'm going to be sitting there and everyone's going to be like, hey, I know you. You know?
No, you don't. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome.